Is hereby called to order. Let us rise for the prayer. Mighty Father God, as we face challenging times in our nation and around the world, we ask you, Lord, to dwell among us. We are comforted by the knowledge that you alone are our Savior, Lord, ultimate Master of life. Lord, you know so well that our land needs healing, and I believe it starts with us. We ask that you grant us a humble spirit so we may be an instrument that ushers in your blessing and healing for this nation. O Lord Jesus, your word says the blessed nation is the one whose God is the Lord. And we declare you are the Lord of this nation. Our Lady of Guadalupe, Mother of the true God, our merciful Mother, we thy children come today in an act of filial homage of faith, love, and trust to solemnly consecrate our nation, the Philippines, to thy Immaculate Heart. Take it from our fragile hands into thy own. Defend it and guard it as thy own property. Make our Lord Jesus reign, conquer, and rule in it. Outside of him there is no salvation. To the Lord and Savior, unite all the Filipino people in the love of the Church and also in the cultivation of virtue, in respect for order and fraternal charity. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Secretary.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
De la Rosa,
Presente, señora.
Tibero,
Present.
Lacson, Lapid,
Ano sa señorita?
Martino, Villanueva,
Present.
And 16 senators virtually present for a total of 22. The chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 16th session, Monday, September 28, 2020, and consider the same as approved. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. The journal is approved.
On the journal, Mr. President, of last Tuesday, I move that we defer the approval of the journal of the 17th session, Tuesday, September 29, 2020, at a later hour.
All right, if there is no objection, the approval is hereby deferred.
Thank you, Mr. President. Maybe we can defer also for a later hour the reference of business so that we can tackle some other measures. Mr. President, while we're waiting, is the sponsor already, the sponsor of Create already in the building? Because with the permission of the sponsor,
Yes, she is here.
may,
She's here,
Mr. President,
she's just asking for a few minutes. We can go with the...
yes, may we, actually, Mr. President, meron akong iso-sponsor sana na Cooperative Development Officer bill.
Go ahead. It's your call.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. So para we can get that out of the way. Mr. President, I move that we transfer, with the permission of the body, I move that we transfer from special order, calendar of ordinary business to special order, Senate Bill number 1855 under Committee Report number 117. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. It is so transferred.
Mr. President, I move to consider Senate Bill number 1855 under Committee Report number 117 and ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill number 1855, an act making the position of Cooperatives Development Officer mandatory in the municipal, city, and provincial levels, amending for the purpose Republican
Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr., Senator Richard J. Gordon, and Senator Kiko Pangilinan, Mr. President. May I be allowed to sponsor first, Mr. President?
Yes, you are recognized.
This is in substitution of three bills. Senate Bill number 1327 filed by yours truly, Senate Bill number 1360 filed by Senator Risa Ontiveros, and Senate Bill number 1510 filed by Senator Bong Revilla Jr. On the onset, I would like to greet all the cooperatives, their officers, the CDA officials and stakeholders who are watching our proceedings today via Senate website, the United Co-op Movement Facebook page as well, and online media. We have with us members of the party list Co-op NATCO, Congressman Kanama also tuned in, AGAP party list Congressman Heron, and Co-op Campi, Congressman Bravo, and several unions and federations, Mr. President. They're 2 pages long. I'm worried that if I read them all, I will take up all the time of our distinguished colleagues. So I would just like to greet the cooperatives who are tuned in from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. And we say magandang umaga po, Mr. President, because in the co-op movement, there is no other time more fitting to greet each other but magandang umaga. So whenever we have meetings, even in the evenings, it's always magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Sa co-op sector po, laging magandang umaga ang greetings kahit hapon na or any time of the day. This is to symbolize a new day, a new beginning, and a renewed hope. Prior to hearing these bills, Mr. President, the chairperson of the Committee on Local Government, to which the said measure was referred to, Senator Francis Tol Tolentino, had created a subcommittee on cooperatives officers' bills and designated this representation as subcommittee chair. I would like to thank from the bottom of my heart Senator Tol Tolentino for graciously acceding to my request of tackling these measures by creating the subcommittee. This measure seeks to amend the Local Government Code of 1991 to authorize the creation of the mandatory position of cooperative development officers in all provinces, cities, and municipalities. According to the Cooperative Development Authority, the CDA Master List from 2018, there are 28,784 registered cooperatives across the country. That is already an astounding number, Mr. President. But if we further strengthen government support for co-ops through the co-op sector, through local government units, that number could grow to unprecedented levels. And if we are able to harmonize the sustainability goals of our co-ops, we would be able to see great progress and development across all our regions and all our industries and all our class sectors. That is what we are hoping to achieve with this measure, Mr. President, which will establish CDOs or Cooperative Development Officers in all LGUs in order for us to provide accessible on-the-ground government support to our co-ops and strengthen the cooperative presence across the nation. They will be able to reach communities in our most far-flung areas, and they will be able to deliver vital cooperative support on the grassroots level. Trusting that our LGUs have a good assessment of the size, capabilities, and needs of their respective cooperative sectors, we have crafted this measure to allow our LGUs some flexibility with regards to the appointment of their CDOs. Our LGUs are mandated to appoint or designate CDOs in the municipal, city, and provincial levels. They may opt to appoint a full-fledged cooperative development officer, for which they would have the option to set the rank, remuneration, and other emoluments in accordance to existing laws. Or they may choose to merge the CDO position with an existing position in a related office, unit, or department. As we all know, many LGUs, Mr. President, have already DTI designated negosyo center officers, which they can also utilize for this position. With this provision, we consider the financial capacity of the LGUs. If their financial capacity does not allow to create a new position and appoint full-fledged CDOs, then they can just designate a CDO from the existing officials in the respective LGUs, such as I mentioned earlier, the Enterprise Development Officer, and expand the coverage of duties and responsibilities of such an officer. Our cooperative development officers will be tasked to take lead in identifying groups, sectors, or communities that may be organized into cooperatives in order to address poverty, generate employment, and steer the community towards socio-economic enterprises and development. Our CDOs will also provide assistance to prospective cooperatives by guiding them through their pre-registration or pre-membership seminars and through the preparation of requirements for registration. In partnership with the CDA, the DTI, and other national government agencies, co-op unions and federations, and the academe, our CDOs will provide assistance to our cooperatives through initiatives such as training, education, business, and financial management. Our cooperative development officers will also provide assistance in the development and implementation of risk management, business continuity plans in the face of natural calamities and disasters, which is a most necessary service, as we all know the situation here in our country. With CDOs, we will be able to promote and support our cooperatives and embolden them to raise their economic, social justice, and sustainability targets. And with CDOs, we'll be able to coordinate our regional cooperative sectors toward a unified national cooperative movement. This will further realize our mantra of the Philippine time to sponsor this bill, as today is the eve of the Cooperative Month celebration, which I thank all my colleagues for helping us pass earlier this month. With the passage of this bill, the co-op sector, Mr. President, will have more vigor and reason to celebrate the Cooperative Month. This despite the COVID-19 pandemic, which has befallen on us. And so before I end, Mr. President, also a briefer, many LGUs have already adopted a cooperative development officer or office. I'd say about close to 50% of LGUs across the country, from provinces, municipalities, and cities, have cooperative development officers. This bill is really to be able to reach out to the other 50% who have not yet identified or appointed. The operative word is may appoint a cooperative development officer. So what we would like to do, Mr. President, is to change the word from may to shall, so that the LGUs will have to be appoint cooperative development officers for their localities. So I urge my colleagues, Mr. President, to join us in seeing the passage of this measure, and I thank you all for your support. Mabuhay po and happy Cooperative Month this coming October. So, Mr. President, to co-sponsor the measure, I'd like to ask our dear chairperson of the Mother Committee, Senator Francis Tol Tolentino, to also co-sponsor the measure. May we recognize him po, sir.
Yes, Senator Francis Tolentino is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. It's my honor and privilege to likewise co-sponsor this measure, Senate Bill 1855, which has been devotedly and passionately spearheaded by our good Majority Leader, Senator Mig Subiri. And as he said, tomorrow we will be welcoming the month of October. And October marks the yearly celebration of the co-op month throughout the country. More than thousands of cooperatives and their members and the different stakeholders from the government, non-government sectors would conduct activities every year that promote cooperativism and commemorate its socio-economic significance. There is no greater time than now to tackle this measure, as we recognize the vital role of cooperativism in alleviating poverty and advocating social responsibility. However, we must not let October end with just the fanfare of Co-op Month. Concrete action is needed, and as the chairman of the Local Government Committee, I stand before you today to convey my support to this measure sponsored by Senator Zubiri, mandating the position of Cooperative Development Officer in certain local government units. I'm trying to abbreviate the sponsorship speech, Mr. President, to allow our other colleagues to co-sponsor the same. It is my firm belief that mandating the position of Cooperative Development Officer in the LGU will form a strong link among the co-op ecosystem in the locality, the needs of the community, and the strategic considerations of the executive authority by facilitating tailor-fit partnerships and contextualized cooperation that puts emphasis on the grassroots level. I'm so excited with this, Mr. President, that I'll be suggesting to the good sponsor, the majority leader, that perhaps once this is approved, an accompanying measure should be filed relative to the mandating the creation of a cooperative officer in the private sector, especially in factories, in manufacturing firms with at least 3,000 employees and above, to enable the cooperative sector to entrench its roots and grasp within the private sector. I would like to end this co-sponsorship speech by emphasizing that cooperativism is deeply rooted in the Filipino culture, which is the most recognizable and the simplest concept being bayanihan. Cooperatives were created from the principle that a group of people working together with a unified goal can achieve greater things than one person. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay po ang mga kooperatibang tumutulong para maiangat ang mamamayan mula sa kahirapan. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next in line, Mr. President, is our dear Vice Chair of the Committee of Cooperatives, no other than Madam Risa Ontiveros.
Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized.
Salamat, Mr. President. Salamat, Majority Leader. Mr. President, I would like to thank our chairpersons of the Senate Committee on Local Government, Senator Francis Tolentino, and our Majority Leader and Senate Cooperatives Committee Chair, Senator Mig Zubiri, for acting immediately on the proposed measures, mandating the creation of the position of Cooperatives Development Officers at all levels of our local governments. As the author of Senate Bill 1360 and as Vice Chair of the Senate Committee on Cooperatives, I also thank the Technical Working Group for coming up with a good committee report. The report consolidates and reflects the cooperative sector's realities and the national and local government's nuances and the other stakeholders' views like the academe. The substitute reiterates our recognition of cooperatives' value and contribution in promoting self-help and harnessing people's power towards economic development and social justice. The bill intends to extend the Cooperatives Development Authority's reach through a partnership with local governments in developing the cooperative sector as a robust people's movement against poverty and as a social solidarity economic enterprise in aid of national development. Like the good sponsors, we are hopeful that a designated cooperative development officer will be of significant help in organizing, strengthening, and building resilient local cooperatives. We hope that the cooperative sector shall continue to be a viable and sustainable economic enterprise by mandating cooperative development officers to facilitate the cooperatives' management education in partnership with the different cooperative unions and federations, national government agencies, and academic institutions. Umaasa po akong ang ating mga kooperatiba sa bagong posisyon at mandatong ito para sa mga local cooperative development officers sa mga lokal na pamahalaan ay patuloy na magiging mayabong at magiging makabuluhang kaagapay para sa kaunlarang panlahatan mula sa tao para sa tao. Maligayang parating na Cooperatives Month at marami pong salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to our dear co-sponsor. Mr. President, we'd like to recognize also Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr. for his co-sponsorship measure.
Senator Bong Revilla is recognized.
Mr. President, we are in a very challenging period in our individual and national life as the COVID-19 pandemic wreaked havoc in all facets of our existence. Apart from health, the economy is another major aspect that is majorly affected and hit by the pandemic. During these troubled times, when many people have lost their jobs and many businesses have shut down, we need the collaborative efforts of all sectors to invigorate anew our economy. Undoubtedly, this is the perfect time to intensify our support for the cooperatives in our country. Ito po ang panahon na kailangan nating magkaisa at magtulungan upang makabangon mula sa hirap na dulot ng pandemya. At sa layuning ito, tunay pong malaki ang maiaambag ng ating mga kooperatiba. According to the statistics of Cooperative Development Authority, based on fiscal year 2017 report on operations, there are 18,065 operating cooperatives in the entire country. These numbers express the strength and potentials of cooperatives in helping revive our economy. On the other hand, as mentioned by the good chairman during the committee hearing on this measure, sa 1,715 local government units, LGUs, sa buong bansa, 305 lamang ang mayroong Cooperative Development Officer ayon sa records ng Liga ng Cooperative Development Officers ng Pilipinas. Mr. President, There is therefore a need to strengthen the link between the cooperatives and the LGUs that will enable the government to provide the necessary assistance and support to the former. This endeavor will help us fulfill our constitutional mandate to promote the viability and growth of cooperatives as instruments for social justice and economic development. Accordingly, Senate Bill number 1855 under Committee Report numbers 117 seeks to mandate the position of a Cooperative Development Officer mandatory in all municipalities, cities, and provinces to ensure that the potential of our cooperatives are maximized and that they are guided towards our common development goals by appointing a permanent officer that will focus on their activities and concerns. We can ensure that the government, particularly the LGUs, are proactively involved in their progress and their alignment with our national endeavors. Through the inputs and recommendations of concerned government agencies, LGUs, and their organizations and the stakeholders in this measure, the committee was able to strike a reasonable balance between the need to appoint a permanent officer on one hand and the capacity of the LGUs on the other. Ang panukalang batas na ito ay produkto ng pagtutulungan at kontribusyon ng mga kasama natin sa pagpapalakas ng mga kooperatiba sa ating bansa. As the author and sponsor of Republic Act number 11365, otherwise known as the Cooperative Development Authority Charter of 2019, and as a staunch advocate of empowering cooperatives in our country, there is no one more qualified than our subcommittee chair, Senator Juan Miguel F. Zubiri, to sponsor this legislative proposal. Saludo ko dito sa mamang ito, Mr. President. Mr. President, this representation is an author of the measure having filed Senate Bill number 1510, which was incorporated in the committee report. I would like, therefore, to join the majority leader in espousing this measure and with this permission be a co-sponsor of Senate Bill number 1855. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. President. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President, to Senator Bong Revilla, being that Cavite is one of the provinces with a large number of cooperatives, very successful cooperatives, Mr. President. And also, I'd like to put on record before I recognize the other co-sponsors, Senator Gordon, Senator Cynthia Villar, Senator Joel Villanueva, Senator Sunny Angara, Senator Nancy Binay, and Senator Manny Pacquiao would like to be made co-authors as well, Mr. President. And Senator Ralph Recto, of course, the province of Batangas, as like province of Bulacan and Cavite, are the pillars of cooperatives in the Philippines. And they're all watching now. We have several of your cooperatives watching us today. Mr. President,
Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome po. We'd like to also recognize, Mr. President, Senator Richard J. Gordon to co-sponsor the measure, Mr. President, if he's ready.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Majority Floor Leader, thank you very much, and congratulations to the whole Senate for their stout support of the cooperative movement in this country. Certainly, Mick Subiri and I, and I've always been trying to be the champions. Of course, he's the Captain Ball. He is Batman, I'm Robin in the case of cooperatives, Mr. President. But we really firmly believe in the power of cooperativism in the country. It shows what I call in my slogan, self-help, self-reliance, cooperation, Mr. President. Having said that, Mr. President, I grew up in cooperatives and I know the power of cooperativism in this country. I remember my father helped form the Olongapo Subic Casillas Transport Cooperative. It became one of the biggest cooperatives, transport cooperatives in the country, if not the biggest. In fact, we lost their leader and it went down a bit. However, it went back up and now it's got yellow buses flying the route in Subic Bay and also taxis that ply the route in Subic Bay. Then we go to another cooperative within Subic Bay, the Balikatan Ladies Organization, Mr. President, which we formed. These are the Manangs who used to cut the grass, and guard the houses, and they formed themselves into a cooperative. And in fact, they started out as voluntary janitors in hospitals. Then they did catering services at the Subic Bay Freeport. They eventually opened a gas station and partnered with PT&T Thailand, Mr. President. Mr. President, also, I remember when I was mayor, I really pushed the cooperative movement principally because we created a market cooperative way back in 1985, Mr. President. And it started with a 1 peso contribution, like paluwagan among its members. After 7 years, it has acquired a lot with a 5-story building located at 3220 20th Place, West Back, main office, and a prime lot at 23rd Street, West Back. They've been able to send their children for scholarships. They've been able to borrow money to finance tuition and businesses, etc. And they've really grown up more and more as we went along. In Subic Bay, we also formed the SBMA Welfare's multipurpose cooperative that has been going on. It stalled for a while, but then it started. Such is the nature of cooperatives. That's why, to me, the idea of Senator Subiri to put a man in local government to assist those who want to cooperate, to put up cooperatives to alleviate human suffering, eradicate poverty and hunger, and certainly provide the membership with confidence to be able to have quality education and to make sure that they don't have to be without, that they are part of a group, that people can go, they can go to their neighbor and get assistance through the cooperative. And to me, that is the very essence of bayanihan, Mr. President. Talagang tayo nagtutulungan sa mga panahon ng taghirap, Mr. President. In fact, I was kind of worried last time when Senator Recto and the president of the cooperatives, Congressman Bravo, were on 2 helicopters. And nakita niyo, pag nasa cooperative kayo, kahit na mag-crash yung helicopter, buhay pa yung presidente ng cooperative. Mr. President, si Mr. Bravo, Congressman Bravo. But levity aside, Mr. President, I cannot overemphasize the fact that I worked with Senator Butch Aquino, and we used to go to the provinces, Mr. President, and really preach the value of cooperativism. I'm sorry we lost him, and I remember him today as a stout champion of cooperativism. And certainly, therefore, it behooves all of us to support this bill. I congratulate my sparring partner, Mick Subiri, for being able to lead in this bill, and I congratulate all the others, Senator Angara, everybody who has signed up, Senator Villanueva, the seatmates, Senator Villar, who knows the value of this, Tol Tolentino, of course, Risa Ontiveros, Bong Revilla, and my brother Kiko Pangilinan, who have been signed up as sponsors, and may our tribe increase and with the cooperatives increase in size. Thank you very much, Mr. President. God bless the Philippines.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'd like to thank Senator Gordon. He has been instrumental in many of the decisions we've made to be able to support the cooperative movement, Mr. President. As he said, he's been in the cooperative sector for a long time in Subic and Olongapo. Mr. President, before we recognize the next sponsor, I received messages that Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, together with Senator Grace Poe, would like to be made also co-authors and co-sponsors of the measure, Mr. President, for the record.
All right, we place it on record.
And if my colleague from Davao, Senator Bato, would also like to be made a co-sponsor, Mr. President, we would like that because the big cooperatives are in Davao, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
De La Rosa is being made a sponsor of what, a hamburger or?
Yes, that is we will still see, Mr. President, by tomorrow,
Okay.
if you will treat us the hamburger.
All right, thank you.
So I think he would like to be made also co-sponsor kasi maraming kooperatiba dyan sa the Davao region, Mr. President.
All right, we place that on record.
Yes.
Yes,
And Mr. President, Thank you. Mr. President, we'd like to recognize as well our distinguished colleague from Pampanga and an agriculturist himself, no other than Senator Kiko Pangilinan, to co-sponsor the measure.
Senator Francis Pangilinan is recognized.
Kiko.
Naga.
There you go. Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon to our colleagues. This representation would like to commend our colleagues, the Majority Leader, Mig Zubiri, Senators Revilla, Tolentino, and Ontiveros for crafting this much-needed reform in our cooperatives for Senate Bill number 1855 under Committee Report number 117. Bayanihan and Damayan are core values that are at the heart of the cooperative, which, to my mind, in turn is at the heart of our belief that Filipino farmers and fisherfolk, given the support and opportunity, will be able to lift themselves out of poverty. Malalim ang aming paniniwala na sa pamamagitan ng pag-oorganisa ng mga magsasaka at mangingisda sa mga kooperatiba, magkakaroon sila ng mas maraming options, kung paano madadagdagan ang kanilang kita. Maaaring sa pamamagitan ng value adding, marketing o sama-samang pagpuno sa malalaking demand ng mga mamimili na hindi kakayaning punuan kung sila ay nag-iisa lamang. We believe that our farmers and fisherfolk to rise above poverty, they have to move away from subsistence farming and instead pursue or join farm-related enterprises such as cooperatives. Capacitate them and provide them with a market that will not take advantage of them, foster the spirit of an entrepreneurial community that will empower them. Marami na tayong nakitang halimbawa nito, lalo na ngayong pandemya, mula sa mga ibinahagi sa atin ng ating mga Department of Agriculture, ng mga local governments. Sa Sorsogon, ang Santa Cruz Development Cooperative kasama ang 170 pang local rice farmers ay pinagbilhan ng LGU ng palay sa halagang 1.5 million na nagsisigurong meron silang sapat na buffer stock habang patuloy pa rin ang quarantine sa kanilang probinsya. Dahil sa pagbili ng LGU ng kanilang palay, sapat ang kanilang kinita upang mabayaran ang halos 98% ng kanilang mga utang sa ilalim ng Fertilizer Loan Assistance Program. Sa Pamplona, Camarines Sur, 5,170 bags of rice sa halagang 9.6 million ang binili ng LGU mula sa Camsur Multipurpose Cooperative at mga local rice farmers. Sa Caramoan, Camsur, 3.7 million worth of rice ang binili mula sa isang farmers cooperative. Sa Legazpi City, Albay, bumili ang LGU ng 4,500 bags of rice worth 8.3 million mula sa isang kooperatiba. Sa Dulag, Leyte, Ormoc City at Motyong, Samar naman, kwento ng kanilang mga municipal agriculturists, tumaas ang kita ng mga magsasaka at kooperatiba dahil tinapatan ng LGU ang presyo ng kanilang mga produkto kumpara sa mga nabibili sa middleman at ang benta sa palengke. Bukod pa rito, nakatipid din daw ang mga residente dahil sa iskemang ito ay nakatulong sa higit na 77,000 households o mga pamilya. Sa San Agustin, Isabela, bumili direkta ang provincial government ng 10,960 bottles of fresh and pasteurized milk na nagkakahalaga ng 274,000 pesos mula sa San Agustin Dairy Cooperative noong Mayo 2020. Ang mga dairy products na ito ay pinamahagi ng provincial government sa Cagayan Valley Medical Center at iba pang district at major hospitals sa Isabela sa gitna ng pandemya. Dahil sa pagbili ng provincial government, nadagdagan ang kita ng kooperatiba ng halos 30,000 piso. Ilan lamang yan sa mga halimbawa kung paano nakakatulong ang direktang pakikipag-ugnayan ng LGU at ng ating mga kooperatiba sa tulong ng Department of Agriculture. Kumita ang ating mga magsasaka kahit pa sa kaligitnaan ng pandemya. As of July 2020, over 245 farmers cooperatives and associations benefited from LGU's direct purchase of agri-fishery products. Over 6 billion pesos worth of agri-products were purchased by local governments during this pandemic. And all this was done even without a municipal cooperative officer. Lalo na siguro dahil dito sa batas na ito, mas lalawig pa ang mga kooperatiba sa ating bansa. Ang mga nakuhang aral ngayong pandemya ay magiging bahagi na ng new at better normal para sa ating sektor ng agrikultura. Ang dagdag na kita dulot ng direktang pagbili ng produktong ng mga magsasaka at mangingisda ay dapat magpatuloy kahit wala na ang pandemya. Higit sa lahat, walang masasayang na mga produkto dahil nandiyan ang gobyerno upang saluhin ang pinaghirapan ng ating mga magsasaka at mangingisda. All these would be more and more a reality nationwide with a cooperative development officer. As such, with the firm belief that this bill is what's needed to boost and empower our cooperatives, we would like to manifest and thank the good authors and sponsors of the measure that I have been allowed to co-author the measure as well. Maraming salamat. Mabuhay ang kooperatiba, mabuhay ang mga magsasaka at mangingisda, mabuhay ang sambayanang Pilipinas. Salamat po.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. And finally, we have another distinguished colleague who'd like to sponsor no other than our Pambansang Kamao. I know there are two more. The Pambansang Kamao, Senator Emmanuel Manny Kamao Pacquiao.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Manny Pacquiao, the
Nako.
is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, Majority Leader, and to all my colleagues. Mr. President, I joined our hardworking Majority Floor Leader, Senators Juan Miguel Suvere, Senator Hontiveros, Senator Revilla, and Senator Tolentino in posing for Senate Bill number 1855, an act making the position of Cooperatives Development Officer mandatory and municipal, city, and provincial levels. Saludo po ako sa mga cooperative movement dito sa ating bansa dahil napakarami po ng mga kababayan natin ang natutulungan na masinso at umangat ang kanilang pamumuhay. We recognize the vital role of the more than 18,000 cooperatives in our country. Dapat lamang na gawing mandatory ang pagkakaroon ng CDO sa government units upang mas marami pa ang matulungan na existing cooperatives at mas mapabilis pa ang pagbuo ng iba pang kooperatiba. Dito sa amin, Mr. President, ang daming nagawang tulong ang mga kooperatiba dito sa pagdating dito sa problema ng pandemic. Nakapag-donate po sila ng milyon-milyong sa halaga po pesos para po makatulong sa ating mga kababayan. So napaka-importante po talaga na suportahan natin itong programa na to. With this, Mr. President, I would like to express my full support for the passage of this measure and be made co-sponsor and co-author. Happy Cooperatives Month. Daghang salamat kaninyong tanan o mayong hapon ka na ng tanan. Daghang salamat. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, and also to co-sponsor and make a manifestation. May I recognize Senator Christopher Bongo, Mr. President.
Senator Christopher Bongo is recognized.
Mr. President, I would like to express my full support for this measure mandating each municipality, city, and province to have a cooperative development officer. This will help our LGU strengthen and encourage formation of cooperatives for employees. More so, this is great opportunity for our fellow government officials and individual stakeholders with low and average income earners status to engage in increase productivity that will contribute to their economic upliftment. For these reasons, Mr. President, I manifest my intent to be a co-author of this measure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, we appreciate the support of Senator Bongo. Mr. President, I move to allow our colleagues to study the measure further. I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1855.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Oh, Mr. President. Yeah. Mr. President, my apologies. Anyway, Senator Lapid also texted me just now to remind me that he would like to be made a co-author of the measure, and he will just insert to the record his co-sponsorship speech, Mr. President. Senator Lito Lapid.
Current co-authored.
We will
Yes.
place it in record.
And also Senator Bongo, Mr. President. Yes.
Yeah, Senator Go. Any objection to the motion? Suspension? All right.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Consideration suspended.
With that, we move back to the first item of the agenda, Mr. President. I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1357 under Committee Report number 50, Mr. President.
Hearing no objection, consideration of the measure is in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the status is we're still in the period of interpellation. We'd like to recognize the sponsor, Senator Pia S. Cayetano, and to interpellate on the first on the list is Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr., Mr. President.
Senator
I
Pia
recognize him.
Cayetano is recognized for the period continuation of the period of interpellation and to interpellate Senator Bong Revilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will no longer propound clarificatory questions since most of my questions have been answered and covered in the interpellations of our colleagues. But please allow me to just spread into the record my support for CREATE, considering its main purpose of making our country more attractive to investors, which we are in dire need of, to help boost the Philippine economy amidst the pandemic. And this early, I would also like to extend my congratulations to Senator Pia Cayetano for ably and untiringly defending and sponsoring this measure. That's all, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Congrats, Pia.
Salamat, Senator Bong Revilla. Maraming salamat sa iyong suporta.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for that very short interpellation
Yes,
manifestation.
maraming salamat na napakaiksi.
That is a very welcome development, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of Senator Recto and Senator Pangilinan, Senator Villanueva has asked, because I think he has to log out early, if he can go ahead. Is that correct, Mr. Villanueva, Senator Joel? Or would you mind, you can go right after. I know Senator Recto, Mr. President, is very long. It's a long interpellation.
Mr. President, Majority Leader,
I don't mind.
my impression is that my schedule will be on Monday. From the list I saw last night, you had Senator Bong Revilla to go ahead of me, Senator Joel, and Senator Dick Gordon. Thereafter, I could resume my interpolations, Majority
I know
Leader.
the list that was given to me today kind of just jumbled up. So I guess the offices called up your offices. So with that clarification, thank you, Senator Ralph Recto, Mr. President. I'd like to thank him. With that clarification, maybe we can move it up. If with the permission of Senator Villanueva, we can start with Senator Kiko Pangilinan and then you right after. With that, Mr. President, maybe recognize Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan if he's ready to interpolate the good lady senator from Taguig.
Yes, very quickly. Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. May we know if the good sponsor is willing to yield to a few questions, Mr. President?
Yes, of course, Mr. President. I will yield to my teammate in the UP volleyball team, circa 80s, champion era.
Yes.
Our colleagues are very much in tune with basketball. Mabanggit man lang ang volleyball.
Thank you. Your team was champion, Madam Sponsor. My team was second place. We were champions the year before we entered. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. My questions will be focused on agriculture. Mr. President, distinguished sponsor, a major obstacle in the development of the agriculture sector in the country is the lack of capital and investments in the agriculture sector. In the current tax incentive regime, may we know what agri and agribusiness industries and activities are incentivized?
Actually, Mr. President, currently in the IPP, it is included as one of the incentivized activities.
Yes, I understand agriculture. There are three tiers.
Is His Honor asking about the current or the bill? Because my response
bill.
was currently.
Yeah, currently, and then later on we will proceed with the bill.
Okay, so currently it is. Yeah, and currently, Mr. President, there's no hierarchy. It's just incentivized. It's as simple as that. And that's why, depending on His Honor's direction, I will be happy to explain that in the Create Bill, we incentivize it in many ways. Agriculture.
Yes, with this current regime, tax regime and incentives regime, do we have the numbers in terms of the total size of investments in agri and agribusiness? For example, do we have agribusiness and agribusiness enterprises registered with our IPAs?
Million. I'm just checking. I have the file. I'm just reading it now so I can explain it a little bit with clarity. That is 3 million. Mr. President, let's see. 2019, the total investments received, which receive incentives is 5.7 billion. That's for 2019, and it's spread across I believe only two IPAs, Mr. President.
Yes. Clearly, we would like to have more investments in the agri and business sector.
Yes, clearly.
Yes, as I mentioned yesterday, briefly, my interjection is that poverty is really primarily a rural phenomenon. Some 70% of poverty is actually in the rural areas, and their main source of livelihood precisely is agriculture, and therefore investments in agriculture are key to be able to address poverty, raise their incomes, provide them with the capacity to value add their products, the technology as well to make our agri products more high end, or at least adding value to them and getting better prices for them. So obviously 5.7 billion investment and 2 IPAs on agriculture is something that hopefully we can turn around and increase with this measure.
May I interject, Mr. President? May I interject?
With the permission of the two
Of course.
senators.
Yes, please go ahead to the chairman of the committee.
I just want to know the names of the IPAs.
BOI and BOI ARM. So BOI pa rin, actually.
BOI from BOI?
BOI is one. The other one is also BOI but ARM.
ARM. And do we have a name of the companies that were given incentives? In the record, do we have the name of the companies?
Mr. President, Madam Senator, that's one of the problems because I believe
Maybe you can just send me.
certain names were not included. So despite the desire of our agencies to have them, it was not included, Mr. President.
So that's okay, Ms. Chairman. Can you just give me the list later on?
Sure.
Thank you.
We're happy to do that. And sadly, it's a short list because there's not that much. In fact, just to add, I've also asked if they can disaggregate kasi it is agri, I think fishery and forestry. So I've also asked
That's okay.
a breakdown of that.
That's okay, but we just want the list. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you too for that intervention. We would also we're also very interested to know and have a copy of this list. Maybe we should pin medals on them uh, for for the willingness
The
to
few.
support our agri sector. Um, Clearly, Madam President, we would like to see how this new create measure will support and will promote, more investments in the agri sector. But we just have some clarification. Why are there two? May you explain the three tiers and the impact or the agriculture industry supported by these three tiers. The clarification is being sought because tier one has agriculture, fishery, forestry, and agribusiness activities. And then tier three also has agriculture, fishing, but it qualifies it with highly technical manufacturing, require employment of knowledge, modern science, engineering, state-of-the-art technologies. Can we be clarified?
Yes, Mr. President, I'm happy to clear that. Mr. President, Tier 1, if you look at the list of activities, are basic activities. I would simply explain this by saying it aims to help us achieve our sustainable development goals. As simple as that, no? Not necessarily using any state-of-the-art technology, not much interventions, but the fact that there is investment in that field already is helping us achieve our sustainable development goals. It already uplifts the lives of the Filipinos. So the objective from my understanding is to keep it simple because these are very basic industries as Her Honor Senator Villar, His Honor Senator Pangilinan have pointed out, no? So simple lang siya. Madaling mag-qualify dyan kasi it is an essential industry that we want, as essential sector that we want to support. Now, I will jump to tier 3, which is basically the highest level of incentives is given here. And these are basically for state-of-the-art interventions and technology. So it refers to highly technical manufacturing, agriculture, fishing, forestry, and service activities that indispensably require the employment of knowledge, modern science, engineering, state-of-the-art technologies, and research in the process of production of goods and services, resulting in demonstrable significant value-added productivity, efficiencies, and breakthroughs. So, in a nutshell, Mr. President, on the very basic investment in agriculture that they will already receive incentives under tier 1, and then in the more complex investments they will receive more incentives under tier 3. If His Honor will allow, I'd like to also explain how strongly I feel about this. I am not an expert compared to the other agriculture experts here, no? But the little that I have seen and I have observed in developed countries, like in the US and in Japan, they can have hectares and hectares of land manned only by one person using very high-tech machinery. We don't have anything like that in the Philippines, no? Now, it's not my objective to replace labor with AI, but I believe all of us would want our farmers to be able to use technology to enhance their production and to even free up their time to go into other endeavors. And that is why, Mr. President, I have asked DA, and this is consistent with Tier 3, to study what is the future of agriculture, because in Silicon Valley now, they are now manufacturing agricultural products, not in the way we know it. In fact, Futurists of Food said that agriculture as we know it is dead. So this will really promote that kind of investment, Mr. President. Hindi tayo pwedeng pag-iwanan. On the other hand, basic agriculture will still be supported in Tier 1.
Yes, thank you for that clarification.
Mr. President, may I interject, please? Mr. President.
Yes, Senator Villar, with the permission of the two. Senator.
Yes, please go ahead.
I just want to manifest that in the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund, which has a a budget of 10 billion a year, 5 billion will go to mechanization of our rice farms. And in the recently passed on second reading Coconut Industry Development Fund, we have allocated 10% or maliit lang kasi, 500 million for the processing of coconut, which will be part of mechanization. So in all the bills that we are passing now, we are providing for mechanization because there is not enough labor in agriculture anymore. Even in the sugar industry, wala na yung mga migrant worker. Talagang kailangang mag-mechanize na tayo. Otherwise, the young people will not go to agriculture. They don't want to work with their hands. They want to work with the machine. So, ito lang po para maintindihan ng ating mga colleagues sa Senate na talagang we are going to mechanization at all costs. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you for that. And in relation to that interjection, Madam Sponsor, for example, there is, the reality of our coconut industry is that, as was earlier, well, as we explained in the interpellation of the Cocoa Levy bill, is that we actually we produce 15 billion liters of cocoa water every year. Because I'm sorry, 3 billion liters of cocoa water every year because we produce around 15 billion nuts. And each nut, 5 nuts will produce 1 liter of cocoa water. But we don't have the technology, at least it is not available, or enough technologies available to harness that cocoa water. And therefore, the biggest cocoa water I think napakaliit, no? Maybe 1 million liters of cocoa water a month. That's only 12 million or even 50, sabi mo lang 50 million liters. Billion pa rin, 3 billion liters pa rin of cocoa water is thrown away. In this tier 3, would that be considered a highly technical manufacturing if a cocoa water investor comes into the country, or a local company decides we will go into cocoa water production? Would that fall under tier 3?
I'm checking, Mr. President, but I would surmise, if you ask me, if this is using technology, hindi lang siya yung, alam mo yung pag nagbabike ko ako, titigil ako sa bike, tapos may magbibiyak ng nyog, hindi, una bubutasan para mainom mo, tapos bibiyakin para makuha mo yung laman. Kung hindi na ganun yon, then that's already considered using technology, no? I just don't know if it's highly technical, pero I would support it for that reason alone, for many reasons, as His Honor had mentioned.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
it results, as I said, no, it would result it results in demonstrable, significant, and value-added productivity, efficiency breakthroughs in science and health. Health yun, di ba? All over the world. Pinupush naman ang native products as health supplements and so on and so forth. So the answer is yes.
Yes, because right now, precisely, we're throwing away 99% of our cocoa water, billions of liters. A liter of cocoa water, I think the market price is around $1. So that's already $3 billion that is being thrown away. And therefore, you want to have the technology immediately to come in, and the investments to come in so that we can precisely bring value adding to the coconut industry and not just rely on the copra, which is really at the bottom of the value adding ladder, for lack of a better term.
Actually, Mr. President, in trying to get the info, you may know him, our classmate in law school, si Attorney Joey Torres. Somebody very close to him, in what part of, I'm not sure if it's Butuan, but off Cagayan de Oro, there's a coconut processing plant for cocoa water. So I'm curious if they are registered. I don't know. I'm just adding it there because I know for a fact that is the main business of this gentleman that we know through our common classmate.
Yes, and another byproduct of coconut would be the cocoa coir. We mentioned this also during the interpellation, that we produce 15 billion nuts a year. But again, I don't have the exact figures, but over 90% of those husks are thrown away. And yet these are the husks, if there is enough technology, we can actually transform them into coconuts, cocoa coir. If I'm not mistaken, the cocoa fabric is also used in the chairs, the seats of Mercedes-Benz. Yung pinaka ano niya, pinaka seating niya, yung cushion. And of course, tufting, ginagamit din yan. But again, we're throwing away billions of pesos worth, billions of dollars worth of potential products precisely because the technology is not made available. Would that also fall under tier 3 when investors come in, bring in technology, set up these companies that will process the cocoa husk and produce cocoa coir and coconuts and other high value products?
Innovation in our country or else?
My fear is that it might be, you know, in their interpretation, you know, this is not state of the art. Other countries already have this, etc. But the point is, we don't have it, and we need to have it, and we're throwing away all these raw materials precisely because the technology is not there. That's my concern, because if the technology is already made available, but it's not, I mean, everywhere else in the world, but we're not doing it. I'd like to think that would be an incentive for them to come in. And should be. Yes.
Yes. The short answer is as long as it uses an innovation, it will be covered in tier 3. What I'm clarifying, because I support the direction of His Honor, is that, you know, if we're talking about resources that are going to waste, shouldn't we be more how do you put, liberal in giving the most incentives with whatever technology is being offered? Because otherwise, not only are we being wasteful, we are throwing away what would otherwise be useful products, no, or byproducts of a natural product. And second, it's a market that should be served. It's an underserved market. So I'm very open if His Honor would like to work with me to tweak, you know, tier 3 in such a way to ensure that we capture that.
Yes, yes. Because my concern is that the interpretation might be such that no, you're only allowed tier 1 because tier 1 also includes manufacturing. But precisely, you know.
Like I said, I understand His Honor's concern, and let's work on it together. But for now, the answer we are getting is it will be included in tier 3 because it involves an innovation. So okay na po yun.
Okay. And maybe we will look into how we can better craft, or at least make sure that that intent is there. Because we can always, you know, precisely, we need the capital, we need the technology, we need the investments in the agriculture sector so that we can really maximize and level up and address poverty in these areas. Actually, this is really just my concern. How we can get big ticket investments in agriculture and agriculture in agro-industrial enterprises. We don't want just 5.7 billion and 2 IPAs. Yeah, we'd like to see more of that in the agriculture and agri-industry sector. In fact, I don't know. I'm just thinking right now, no, because you know, for example, the technical description of fertilizer it's not agri. You know, it's actually manufacturing, but it is also agri-manufacturing. And so we'd like to make sure that we capture, you know, these investments in the agriculture sector, whether it is manufacturing or technology, so that we can get as much investments in and address our underdevelopment. If I may just put on record, for example, the government of Thailand spends more than 1 trillion baht annually for their agriculture expenses as a government. We're doing 100 billion, including NIA. So you can see they're spending 10 to 15 times more. And they're exporting around $40 billion annually. We're exporting $6 billion. And yet we're still a net importer because we are also importing a lot of agricultural products. So it's really something that needs to be addressed, something that has to be addressed squarely. So I have no other questions. Really, my possible proposed amendments will go along those lines. How do we ensure that these incentives will bring in more investments in the agri-industry sector? And thank you for the opportunity to raise these questions, Madam Sponsor. And again, in advance, congratulations. Your tenacity and your focus is really admirable. And maraming salamat sa pagkakataong ito.
Thank you, Mr. President. I fully support His Honor's advocacy. Please feel free to send me, a list, just so that I can also pre-clear it that these are in the SIPP. Because as I mentioned, the tiers are general, but if His Honor has very specific, like yung sa fertilizer, etc., we will be happy to check. And for the record, Mr. President, although this does not respond to a specific question of His Honor Senator Pangilinan, but it responds to a number of questions raised by our colleagues before in the past days, that there are many investors in our country who invest because it is a profitable venture for them with or without incentives, or they otherwise just believe in what they're doing. So as I mentioned, I am familiar with a gentleman who produces the cocoa water and exports it, and they're not even receiving incentives, Mr. President. In fact, they don't know that they can get incentives, and yet their business has been thriving. But of course, because we want to push this, then I'm happy to tell him that it can be included for incentives. But I use this to emphasize the point that there are a lot of businesses that are not receiving incentives, and they are doing well, they are thriving, and they are paying taxes to contribute to the economy. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Sponsor, for the opportunity to raise these questions. Thank you for the answers. Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, Senate President.
Mr. President.
The Majority Leader, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next online is our distinguished colleague from the great province of Bulacan, no other than Senator Joel Villanueva, to interpolate, Mr. President.
Yes. Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Mr. President, before we proceed with Senator Villanueva, let me also just put on the record that fertilizers is definitely part of the incentive, and incentivized products, or creation of those products are incentivized. Thank you. I'm ready for Senator Villanueva.
Yes, thank you. Do you hear me now, Mr. President?
Yes, we hear you.
Thank-
Before we also proceed, may I ask the SecGen to increase the aircon? Pinagpawisan ako sa mga tanong ni Senator Pangilinan. Joke lang, pero mainit. Mainit po. Okay.
And maybe adjust the volume coming from the session hall, because it's easier to listen. It's easier to listen to our colleagues in the who are virtually present than those who are inside the session hall. If it's just possible, Mr. President, just a special request. Thank you.
Also, it's partly my fault because my laptop, if I look at my laptop, I will already kiss the microphone. So let me also adjust it so I tend to move backwards. Let me also adjust. Please feel free, anyone, to let me know if you cannot hear me. Sayang naman yung mga explanation ko kung di niyo ako maririnig. Anyway, I'm ready, Senator Villanueva. Always.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. First of all, may I begin by placing and spreading into the records that this representation shares the noble objectives of the author in promoting a tax system that is fair, transparent, effective, and efficient. And we have been listening attentively to the numerous interpellations that happened yesterday and the past weeks. Mr. President, as chair of the Senate Committee, your Senate Committee on Labor and Human Resources Development, we have been looking forward to discussing and shaping this bill since it was previously introduced as Trabaho Bill. Needless to say, Mr. Chair, among the key features that we are looking at include, among others, those that relate to job generation, training, linkages, and since yesterday, even research, of course, to safeguard our workers. Mr. President, I'd like to start by asking if the distinguished lady Senator, our distinguished colleague from Taguig, the hardworking Senator Pia Cayetano, would yield to some questions.
Yes, of course, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. President, I will not dwell much on the issues raised by our distinguished colleagues, particularly with the issue of the possibility of job losses, which was pointed out by Senator Ralph Recto. But I am really interested in continuing to listen in that particular issues. But let me also just place on the record that I will no longer touch on the income tax holidays o yung reduced corporate income tax. We'd like to place on record that we fully support the accelerated reduction of corporate income tax from 30% to 25% in 2020 and further to 20% in 2027. This has been long overdue, Mr. President, and we have seen how the Filipino corporations are among the most overtaxed economies in ASEAN. Now more than ever, the corporate income tax reduction is crucial. It provides much needed relief to support our businesses for them to recover amidst this pandemic. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, the ILO predicts that about half of jobs in 5 Southeast Asian countries such as Cambodia, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam are at high risk of being affected by animation, by artificial intelligence, etc. The ILO further estimated that this means at least 18 million, Mr. President, 18 million Filipino workers is at risk of losing their jobs as we transition to the fourth industrial revolution. I'm not saying they're going to lose their jobs, but they are at risk. However, if you look at the study also conducted by Asian Institute of Management, it shows a bigger portion, Mr. President, of workers at risk due to automation. In their study, it's 7 out of 10. Ulitin ko, yung sa ILO, half, 5 out of 10. Dun sa AIM, 7 out of 10 Filipino workers are employed in high-risk jobs. My first question would be, distinguished colleague, Madam Chair, Senate Committee Chair on Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation, and Futures Thinking, and I'm sure she would be able to answer this particular question. What are the sectors or industries that faces face the biggest threat of automation, and how create or this measure would help in ensuring that considering that they are now at risk, at least give them that peace of mind that the government is doing something so that they will have the confidence to face the future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. His Honor already knows I love that question. It allows me to at least share with our colleagues what I've been learning in the Committee on Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation, and Futures Thinking. Mr. President, let me answer that in 3 ways. No, security of our labor force and decent jobs is a Sustainable Development Goal number 8. So embedded in every possible nook and cranny of the CREATE bill is the attainment of our SDGs. And that is why the most basic investments would automatically receive tier 1 incentives, precisely because the fact that they add jobs and are focused on helping us achieve our sustainable goals, we already are incentivizing those businesses. So that's my first answer there. Mr. President, the second point I would like to make is that the world, I will address the job loss and the effect of AI and technology on our job market before I go into the details of what industries are affected. The World Economic Forum says by 2030, so this is 10 years from now, 50% of jobs will be changed by automation. Okay, so let's take a moment to ponder that. 50% will be changed by automation. But it does not mean that 50% will lose their jobs. No, only 5% of jobs will be eliminated. So in other words, the effect of automation is that workers need to upskill. Again, that is his honor's
Yes, agree.
favorite topic
Agree.
also. So by
Yes.
upskilling, by putting good use, TESDA, we will be able to address this issue. By accepting that the world is a volatile world, there are changes coming all the time, and we are ready to upskill, not just once, not just twice in a lifetime, but continuous upskilling, we will survive and thrive. Finally, 9 out of 10 jobs will require digital skills. So can you imagine, kahit farmer ka, fisherman ka, and 9 out of 10 daw of jobs will require. So if they really
That's why
want to uplift
important yung
them,
digital ano natin.
yes. So I won't belabor the point because I know His Honor knows this, but the reason for the question is to really spread into the record. No, now we know these facts. Now, two more points I want to make. I'll respond to the industries affected that His Honor asked, and then I will also. Would you like me to proceed on how we are addressing this in Create or later?
Please,
Can I go ahead?
we'd like to hear from the sponsor. Yes.
Okay. So,
Having a hard time.
the most vulnerable workers, Mr. President, in the future are really from agriculture, fisheries, and forestry. The most affected.
Okay.
Most likely 90%, am I reading this screen? 90% of them will be affected. And that is why I cannot overemphasize that I told
Yes.
you, study what is the future of food. Because gawa pa rin tayo ng gawa in the same way. And like I said, Silicon Valley is already manufacturing their food through printers. So yung nakikita niyo pong mga plant-based food, na yung mukhang hamburger, yung mukhang tapa, yung mukhang steak, kasi that is the wave of the future because scientists tell us we cannot feed the population at the rate we are using up our resources. So we have to start investing in that kind. Otherwise, affected talaga tong 90%. We can mechanize, pero hindi papunta dun sa direksyon ng future of food pa rin yung mechanization per se. Because other kinds of foods are now being manufactured by developed countries. Now, the next affected sector would be financial and insurance activities.
Yes.
And then industry.
Construction.
Industry
Probably
except
construction.
manufacturing. So I don't know gaano ka-broad itong industry. And then transportation, storage, accommodation, and food service. Again,
Yes.
because technology will really affect this, Mr.
True.
President. And then real estate activities.
Okay.
And so on and so forth. I can share the chart, Mr. President, but that is in a nutshell the top areas that will be affected. Now, very briefly, and I'll be happy to respond to specific question. What CREATE does is, like I said, in the most basic industries, already may incentives yan sa tier 1. Now, when there is use of technology, there is innovation, then you will get tier 3, which is the highest level of incentives, no? And then I must emphasize, there is a misunderstanding that this is simply based on industries, itong incentives natin. No, it is also tied into geographical location. So anywhere that you invest in a less developed country, a less developed area, the incentives will be on the higher side anytime. It doesn't really matter
Thank
kung
you.
tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 ang activities. Basta nasa less developed ka, because we want to push jobs in those areas. we want to achieve the sustainable goals in those areas. May incentives na kaagad yun. And then in a nutshell, what I will add na lang po is that one of the options for an investor for incentive is to avail of the enhanced deduction. And under enhanced deduction, not only is the use of labor will receive 150% deduction. Expense for the training, so sabi nga natin upskilling,
We'll go there.
retraining, includes 200% deduction. And the use of domestic input, and this will spur the growth of MSMEs kasi sila yung magbibigay ng mga input na yun eh. And there will be a demand because these companies that are registered would also like to get the enhanced deduction that comes from the domestic input. That one is 150% also, Mr. President. So in a nutshell, that is how we are addressing this need to reskill and the need to incentivize activities that will assist our people in reskilling and those who will be affected.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair, distinguished colleague. Thank you for emphasizing it's not only the ILO but also the World Economic Forum made this statement about 5 out of 10 is also at risk. Yes, we are saying they're not going to lose their jobs, but they are at risk, and it's quite alarming. And I think as policymakers, we should be looking into this. And I'm glad that the distinguished sponsor of this measure is very much aware of these figures. And as I mentioned, important to note yung at risk. Whether you believe ILO or WEF or AIM, which says 7 out of 10 is at risk, I would just like to point out that included in the study of Asian Institute of Management, the sectors, and I would confirm some of the sectors that the distinguished sponsor made mention, the sectors with the highest probabilities of having jobs automated are in agriculture, forestry, and fishing, 90% risk of automation. Financial and insurance activities, 79%. Construction, 76%. Actually, Mr. President, only the sector of education, arts, entertainment, and recreation, and social work face a relatively low risk of automation. Again, if you talk about agriculture, for instance, these high-risk occupations are farm laborers and fishermen. In finance and insurance subsector, these are bank tellers, counter clerks, and debt collectors. Workers in the retail trade sector are at risk too. And it's good also to mention that the distinguished sponsor mentioned about the digital workforce or sector. It's good to note that this particular bill filed by yours truly and Senator Sani Angara is already on the floor, and we are ready to debate on this matter hopefully next week. And perhaps, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, our next question would be, is our labor sector ready to face the emerging changes brought about by the fourth industrial revolution?
I think His Honor would know the answer better than me because His Honor speaks to the Department of Labor more than me. I'm just responding candidly, but I share His Honor's concern because when you ask that question, obviously you want the answer to include all the steps that are being taken to support this upskilling. No, it's one thing to know
The
it,
trainings,
another thing
yes.
to actually do it, right? So
Yes.
as to that answer, if we are doing it, I have not had in-depth conversations with Dole on that. I hope to because even in my committee on SDG, like I said, no, SDG 8 is decent work, and how can you get decent work if you do not have the skills needed to get that decent work? So I'm checking if we have a Dole representative here that can give us a quick response. But in the meantime,
Let me also spread into the records. Previously, Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleague, we saw industrialization as simply using a machine so that workers are relieved of manual labor and so they can shift to occupations of higher value. Machines were seen as a complement rather than a substitute. But with the fourth industrial revolution, however, the persistent concern among policymakers is clearly its effect on displacement of workers. I think it was mentioned also by our Senate President pro tempore, no? Kailangan wala talagang maiwan na sa napakabilis na pagbabago ng teknolohiya. Let me move forward, Madam Chair, no? I think we are all aware that there is a big room, a very big room for improvement because as we mentioned earlier, at risk ang ating mga workers and tingnan naman natin ngayon kung ilan ba yung nate-train, ilan ba yung na-engage into training. And that's why I'm interested in that particular provision of the measure when it comes to giving enhanced deductions dun sa mga training incentives, no? Yung
Yes.
higher level skills, distinguished colleague, yung higher level skills are required to thrive in automated work environments. And as the distinguished colleague, I think would agree with me, yung developing a future-ready Filipino workforce requires upskilling or retool of workers. Would the distinguished board agree with me? And what can we actually do in this particular issue?
Yes. Mr. President, again, I am grateful that I am speaking to the right person. His Honor also happens to be the Committee Chair of Higher Education. And it also starts with education, Mr. President, because mahirap din naman na mag-retool ka ng isang adult already who has no basic knowledge on the use of digital, has no basic digital skills, right? And that's why one of the things I've learned in futures thinking is that we have to ensure that we are teaching our children and youth 21st century skills. Because if we are still teaching them yung, what do they call it, spoon feeding, no? Sa classroom, memorize this, memorize that. Those were 20th century skills because information was not readily available. These days, information is easily available. What we need to teach them are critical thinking skills. Because if they develop that critical thinking skills, then as soon as they are in senior high, they can already make use of, actually even earlier than that, they can already use these critical thinking skills and easily dive in to other specializations, Mr. President. So the point is it starts with education and then we have to continually embed in their mind that it's about retooling all the time. That's part of their education. Hindi yung one-track mind na hanggang dito lang kayo. So it starts with education and then after that you have post-education retooling that happens all the time and it should be an accepted part of our life, no? Even senior citizens should try to do this because there will come a time and it's already happening in developed countries that all of the transactions will be online. So if you're a senior citizen and you never got used to paying using your cell phone, by the way, I just started doing that during COVID, no, because I did not have any need to use that skill pre-COVID.
Mawawala eh.
Lagi akong may kasamang staff na magbabayad naman para sa akin o kaya cash yung binabayad ko. Pero ngayon, di tayo lumalabas, eh di nag-download na ako ng mga app and I can easily purchase something, can order food just like that. But many seniors do not have this skill, but it's not that hard to learn. So it really starts with that, Mr. President, education and that mindset to keep retooling yourself.
Very much, Mr. President. And really, I appreciate the answers given by and Mr. President, her views about preparing our future, preparing our students, the importance of education. But let me talk about risk training. Mr. President, according to the 2017 Integrated Survey on Labor and Employment, this was conducted by Philippine Statistics Authority. Only 3 of 10, only 3 of 10 workers receive job-related training. If you compare it to our a while ago, AI, 5 out of 10 at risk, sabi ng ILO. Po dun sa training of 10 Filipino workers, at risk of, 3 out of 10 workers receive job-related trainings. And worst, the conduct of training is even more insufficient in sectors that are under threat due to automation. For example, we talk about these workers in the sector of agriculture, forestry, and fisheries were provided job-related trainings. According to the report, in the construction sector, it is only 1 out of 10. And it is only 2 out of 10. So this is I believe, Mr. President, we were talking a while ago about the future. We talk about what we are doing in schools, in TechVoc, in SUCs, in private universities. Yes, we are somehow preparing them, but if you talk about the present workforce of this country who are at risk, only 3 out of 10 receive job-related trainings. And ito ho talaga yung at risk. For example, you talk about those cashiers in the fast food, in the supermarket, etc. Magpalit lang yan ng kiosk na automated way of ordering or paying, matatanggal po agad sila sa trabaho. Well, there are industries, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, such as electricity, gas, steam, and air conditioning supply that recorded a relatively high portion of trained workers. Dyan po sa data, it's 6 out of 10. This industry covers only, constitutes a small portion of the country's workforce. So right now, distinguished colleague, Mr. President, the society seems to be slowly getting on board to prepare our future workers for this. We can see efforts being geared towards building the capacity of our students and the stakeholders in the education sector to make them future-proof. And I'm sure the distinguished lady from Taguig is very much aware of this. However, again, one challenge that remains on preparing the Filipinos who are already an active part of the labor force. Yun ho yung main point dito. And we wanted to know how we can address this in this particular measure.
Mr. President, can I respond now? Is his honor
By all
finished or did we
means.
lose? There, okay. I wasn't sure if it was the connection. Mr. President,
Sorry if I'm having some lag. I'm sorry.
Yes, there's a bit of lag. It's okay. Mr. President, I looked at the figures that His Honor flashed on the screen, and I accept I have the same feeling that His Honor shares when you look at it, that either 10% or only 20% of the workforce in various industries are being trained. We really need to step up with that, Mr. President, because we cannot just be doing our studies and then not see it implemented. But to a certain extent, that's out of our hands, no? Because when we make our studies, we make our recommendations, whether it's a committee report or a law or even a resolution, this will be up to the implementing agencies to really fully implement it. So that's noted, and I join His Honor in really pushing for the retraining of our workers in the various fields. And we have to also put a budget for that. If I may also add, included in the retraining is also basic research, because if you don't also know what you are retraining them for, wala din po yun. And the good senator, chair of the Committee on Higher Education, knows that I share his frustration that the budget that he included, which I supported for research in the SUCs,
Yes,
was
thank
not included. Yung sa for 2020 release, hindi ho siya nasama. That is so sad, Mr. President, because they are the ones on the ground all over the country. So when you talk of less developed areas, maraming SUC na malapit sa kanila. No, malayo sa head office ng DOLE, malayo sa head office ng NEDA, malayo sa head office ng DTI, but the SUCs are there. They could have contributed. So I hope that we will see any support for our push for research also, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished colleague. And again, not to confuse our distinguished colleagues, I'm talking about yung po sa tax incentives na pumapasok, papasok po yung create, mas kokonti na, pagka ho pumasok dun sa enhanced deductions that will give itong research and development, training, and domestic input, mas paliit po no? Yun yung gusto ho nating pagtuunan dito, no, Mr. President, distinguished colleague. And may I know from our sponsor, how many enterprises have
I
availed
have, Mr.
of,
President, before that question, may I make a manifestation, Mr. President?
Senator Villar is recognized with the permission of the two senators on the floor.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that in agriculture, we are really training. We have built 2,367 farm schools all over the country. That is more than one farm school in every town in the Philippines. And in the RCEP, we gave 1 billion for this farm school to operate. In the TESDA budget, they have another 300 million for courses other than rice. But for rice, it's 1 billion. And then for the coconut, which we passed, we're giving 400 million a year to teach our farmers in the farm schools about the things they have to learn with regards to modernization. And for your information, companies engage in agriculture because we experience the shortage of of construction worker. Our company built 4 construction school, one the 2 in Luzon, 1 in Visayas, and 1 Mindanao. And I think all other companies in construction are doing training in construction. And I asked TESDA how much is the budget for the year for construction school, and they said it's 300 million. So I just want to make that manifestation that we are very conscious of this training, and we're giving a lot of budget to this. And in the legislation that we passed, and we will lobby with TESDA so that they will not forget to train our construction worker and our agricultural worker. Yun lang po. Marami pong salamat.
Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you to
Mr.
our
President.
distinguished colleague who is champion of agricultural trainings.
Senator Villanueva and Senator Gordon is seeking the floor, if you will allow.
By all means, Mr. President, thank you.
Senator Gordon, you're recognized.
Thank you, sir. With the permission of both our colleagues, I just wanted to react to Senator Villar's statement. There's a lot of training, but may I just ask if they could provide us with the results of the training? How many people graduated every month in rice or in other products? So that the Senate would always be aware of how much training we have achieved. And then the third rung would be how much productivity has been accomplished. Did the productivity increase? Because this is something that is very close to my heart. We can train and train, but if we do not know how many people are being trained and we do not know whether they're being used, we don't know. Many of them that are trained go abroad. After they're trained, they go abroad. And I think that's important that we realize sino-sino yung mga yan. It's just a request. It's not even a challenge. It's just a request that I think will be well worth the money that we're putting into it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
I will ask DA to give you a list, but I operate 4 farm schools in the Philippines, and every quarter we have a new batch. And before the pandemic, because there is no social distancing, we do 200 students every 3 months. So that's for me only. That's 800 students in my farm school. That's a lot. But in addition to me, all those farm schools are doing training also. And I think with regards to rice, they teach them how to produce inbred seeds so that they can produce their own seeds. And they teach them how to operate what you call this machine so that they can be mechanized. So binabantayan ko po ito kasi talagang ito po ang aking advocacy. So I'm sure that we will give you the list of these farm schools and how many they are training a year. Okay.
Just the last answer. That may be true po sa inyo. Ang gusto ko po sana malaman, katulad ng mga eskwela natin, nagpapa-train tayo ng doktor, ng nurse. Tulad ng pagtaling niya, ng doktor, marami hindi na nagpa-practice ng doktor. Marami nang umalis at nag-nurse. Kailangan po natin malaman kung anong resulta ng ating training para makaka-fine-tune tayo. Yun lang ang gusto ko sabihin.
Alam mo, Senator Gordon, tuwan-tuwa nga yung mga farm school kasi this is additional income to the farms. In addition na nagtatanim sila, nagtuturo sila kasi mahal din ang bayad ng TESDA pag nagturo ka sa farm mo Kaya kung ikaw every month may naturuan kang 25 kasi that is the maximum in a class. The required by TESDA, kung every month nagtuturo kayo, that's 25, that's 100,000 a month, you earn 1.2 billion a year. Kaya this mga farm school, tuwan-tuwa sila kasi kumikita sila. In addition, kasi kulang yung kita nila sa farm nila, kumikita pa sila for teaching. So we're very happy with them and I'll give you the list and I'll give you the figures. We'll ask TESDA and ATI, the Agricultural Training Institute, what is their output every year. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, if I may, Mr. President.
Go ahead, Senator Villanueva.
Thank you. And we commend the efforts of our distinguished colleague from Las Piñas, Senator Cynthia Villar. And can you imagine, Mr. President, kung wala yung efforts ni Senator Villar, mas lalong mababa po itong makikita nating datos mula sa Philippine Statistics Authority, no? And as I mentioned earlier, the figures states that 13% lang po or almost 1 out of 10 workers in the sector of agriculture, forestry, and fisheries were provided job-related trainings. And again, we're talking about what is present. We're not even talking about students or those in the schools, in universities and state colleges. We're talking about our present labor force. If I may continue, Mr. President, before I was interrupted, Mr. President, we were asking our distinguished sponsor as to how many enterprises have availed of tax incentives in 2019, and with that figure, we'd like to ask the distinguished sponsor, in comparison, what would be the estimated number of establishments in the country that is going to qualify for incentives when the grant of fiscal incentives is rationalized under this particular measure, under this create. Do we have the figures kaya?
Mr. President, our latest figures is for 2017 because there has not been any submissions after that, no, and that's also one of the reasons.
That's the latest, Madam. Nothing
yes.
on 2019 or 2018. So 2017 po yung latest.
But I just want to spread it to the record. That is one of the reasons why we are creating FIRB the way we are, because precisely we do not even have the data that is very much needed for us to make certain decisions, no, for our government agencies to make these decisions. So anyway, for 2017, we have 3,150 registered enterprises.
200. I'm sorry. How many?
3,150. 3,150.
Okay. Yes, and that is for 2017, if I'm correct, Mr. President, distinguished colleague. That's for 2017, right?
Yes.
But would we know at least if it's lower or higher this year or last year or 2018 that have availed of the incentives in 2017, which is 3,150?
FOI pa ganun. FEI, oo. I'm pulling up a chart, Mr. President, that I could share with
Okay.
you. Basically, this is coming from PSA and BSP, and I've spread this into the record also the past 2 days. As our foreign direct investment has gone up, the investment of PEZA has gone down, and the investment of BOI was going up and down, and then it took a bit of an upward turn towards 2018. Yes, so that's what I have. It's a chart. I can share it with you, but I don't think that it includes actual numbers after 2017.
Sige po, I'd be interested on that, Mr. President, distinguished colleague. Meron pong data submitted to us when we asked the Department of Finance. Please correct me if I'm wrong. A total of 1,968 enterprises have availed of duties and import VAT incentives. So 1,968 po yan. And then additional 2,953 enterprises have availed of income tax related incentives also in 2017. I think, would the distinguished sponsor agree? These are the right figures. Meanwhile, according po kasi, this is my point, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, according to the list of establishments of the Philippine Statistics Authority, a total of 1,000,003 business enterprises are operating in the country in 2019. And that's why my next question would be, distinguished sponsor, from the menu of incentives under Create, does the sponsor have an estimate on the number of enterprises who will eventually choose enhanced deductions over the option of income tax holiday o plus a special corporate income tax? Kasi yung binanggit nga po natin kanina, yung presently, ito yung nag-a-avail ng mga tax incentives. Pag pumasok yung Create, liliit. Tapos pag pumasok po yung doon sa, and if we're talking about training incentives, paliit po ng paliit yan pagdating po doon sa enhanced deductions. Am I correct, distinguished colleague?
What was your last question? Are you correct with which one? What was that last statement? I was looking at the files to answer you.
Opo, paliit po ng paliit ang binabanggit natin, no? Yung dun sa mga nag-avail, as mentioned earlier, yung data po ng DOF as which was given to me, 1,968 enterprises availed duties and import VAT incentives, tapos 2,953 availed of income tax related incentives. Tapos meron tayong total of 1,000,003 business enterprises. Ang question po natin is that yung estimate on the number of enterprises who will eventually choose, kasi ang pinofocus po natin yung enhanced deductions under Create, those who will choose enhanced deductions over the option of income tax holiday plus special corporate income tax, mas maliit po, paliit ng paliit.
Okay. Mr. President, the answer to that would really depend on the industry, no? But I'm told that their projection is those companies that are heavy in labor would want to avail of this because, as I mentioned earlier, we have enhanced deductions for labor. We also have
Can we ask
enhanced
for a rough
deductions.
estimate, distinguished colleague? I'm sorry. Can we ask for a rough estimate? For example, in that particular example that this distinguished sponsor is sharing with us, ano yung rough estimate doon?
We don't have it, Mr. President, as to who will avail. That's really a choice that they would have to make. And since this is a new a new option being given, they don't have that yet. They know that this is
siguro
something
ganito na lang po, distinguished colleague, distinguished sponsor, is it higher or lower than the um, number of enterprises? Yung sa ang universe natin ngayon is 5,000 po no?
is what higher than what? Is the number of those will avail of enhanced deduction higher than what, Mr. President?
President, how many enterprise do we expect to benefit from training incentives under enhanced deductions in CREATE? Kasi presently, I think dun sa figure na binigay po sa atin, habang wala pang CREATE, merong about 5,000 yung nag-avail noong pong tax incentives, no? Na part of the training incentives that we are promoting. Dito ho, pag pumasok yung CREATE, ano ho yung ini-expect natin? Tataas pa ho ba? Or bababa?
Yes, understand, Mr. President. Actually, Mr. President, the position that DOF takes here is that this option is very enticing because they will really be able to make a lot of deductions. So for those that are running a business well, ang dami talaga nilang deduct, kaya they really anticipate that a big number would be availing of this enhanced deduction because like I said, no, there's a lot, but the three that I always point out is the labor, they can deduct that, the training, they can deduct that, and then the domestic input. Marami pang ibang deductible, including research, etc., etc.
Share distinguished
But
colleague, no?
they
I like the
actually
word
say
that
that
you use.
let me just continue, Mr. President.
Okay.
I think this is what you're waiting for. In a simulation they've done, for 1,332 firms, they actually have a response to that, and it's 54%.
Mr. President, distinguished colleague.
54% of the
Of the
1,332 firms are interested in availing of enhanced deduction.
That's quite interesting, my distinguished colleague. The universe is in it would be the 1 million business enterprises operating in the country. And that's why the main reason why I'm asking this is how do we entice these enterprises to go into this track of availing these enhanced deductions by conducting research and development and training? Yes.
Mr. President, like I mentioned earlier during the interpellation of Senator Kiko Pangilinan, there are a lot of companies that probably could avail of, but for whatever reason, they don't avail. So the universe is, yes, you're right. To a certain extent, the universe is all the companies registered to do business in the Philippines, but the target is really those people who are already registered because obviously they are the ones who are seeking incentives, no? So this simulation was done with incentivized companies. I mean, I don't know, but I am not sure if DOF, DTI would want to promote this with other companies that are happy to pay the full tax. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, if their goal is to tell them mag-expand kayo, mag-invest pa kayo in ibang business, then siguro liligawan po nila yon. Pero kung happy na yun na nagbabayad ng buong tax, hindi na siguro nila sasabihin na, uy, kung magbayad ng tax, ito gawin mo. Hindi siguro ganun ang approach.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I would accept that, despite the fact that I think we should not stop with the remaining 48% that the distinguished sponsor made mention of. But let me just illustrate, distinguished colleague, my point further. Under CREATE, what would be the possibility that a project without, and I'm looking at the conditions or factors stated here, under this measure, what is the possibility that a project without substantial amount of investments, considerable generation of employment, or considerable amount of net exports will get to be part of the strategic investments priority plan?
Mr. President, I'm sorry, I don't quite understand your Honor's question because obviously we would incentivize a company if they are investing in our country and they will produce jobs and they are offering technology and innovation, they are willing to capitalize. So I don't quite understand what his Honors is driving at if the
Yes.
question is how will they get incentive if they have none of the above? I don't understand.
What we're trying to drive at, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, yung mga hindi po papasok dito sa substantial amount of investment, considerable generation of employment, considerable amount of net exports, no? Mr. President, there are jobs or tasks at risk of automation that are present in almost all industries, and I think we have addressed that a while ago. Note that we are talking about very simple jobs here, Mr. President. For example, sales clerks,
Yes. Mr.
yung shop
President,
assistants who are among those facing the most serious threat from
I
automation.
understand.
The job, for example, of a sales clerk include writing down inventory, accepting payment, and
Mr. President, I
operating
understand.
cash registers. Now, Mr. President, let me just finish, no, and only a few enterprises may be qualified for the packages of incentives under CREATE, but practically all would greatly benefit from training incentives if they are given the option to have it. That's my point. And let me spread into the records the position of this representation. On the micro level, if we make training less costly, we encourage an enterprise to expose its workers to other processes involved in the business. And we were talking about the importance of retooling them and upskilling them for the skills needed. And then we encourage the enterprise to give also our workers a chance. This way, in fact, we even help the enterprise survive and adapt to the fourth industrial revolution. Now, on the macro level, we are preparing the economy naman to better brace itself for the impact of fourth industrial revolution. And this sends a policy signal to every Filipino worker and employer that it is the policy of the state to support continuous investment in human resources and development. So, Mr. President, in light of the questions I have raised and in the appropriate time, this representation would like to propose an amendment that would expand the availability of enhanced deductions on training across industries. And I hope, I just wanted to find out if our distinguished colleague is amenable to that. Thank you.
Mr. President, let me just explain, and I thank His Honor for taking time to explain it better to me so that I can also give a more appropriate response. I reiterate, Mr. President, the general rule is all corporations doing business in the Philippines pay taxes. And then we've made the following, a number of exceptions. One exception is for MSMEs, no? So below 250,000, there is no tax on any income of the below 250,000 gross receipts. There is no tax on the income of an MSME. Above 250,000, but with assets below 3 million, they will only be taxed 8%. So that is already our exception in the recently passed train law that supports MSMEs and their employees. And Mr. President, the labor cost is an allowed deduction. So that is already allowed there. What we do, Mr. President, here in CREATE is we sweeten the pie. We are providing for those who are creating more business opportunities through specific industries. And I already mentioned, it could be as basic as SDG, it could be agriculture, it could be any of the SDGs, Mr. President, no? They would already be qualified to be a registered enterprise receiving incentives. But remember, this is an exception to the rule. So there are also a lot of training programs, as His Honor, I'm sure, is aware of, and no less than Senator Villar, our chair of the Committee on Agriculture, mentioned these training programs. Kulang man, then these are programs that government can provide and should provide. But they are not enhanced deduction in terms of incentives that we want to offer companies that are specifically investing in specific industries that we are promoting, Mr. President. We need to be rational in our identification of these industries and where they are locating. A general training subsidy, I am very open to. As I mentioned, I am very open to retooling, to reskilling, but I am a little bit concerned if this is the right place for that, because this is precisely incentivizing investments in particular industries and in particular locations. Ito po yung essence ng CREATE.
The sponsor made mention about the importance and that she is amenable to the issue of retraining and retooling. I think it's important to note that again, we made mention about 7 out of 10 at risk right now, 3 out of 10 ang natitrain sa workforce, and so our only goal here is to expand the program because I think it's crucial to note how many enterprises would benefit or would be, as mentioned by the distinguished sponsor, would be enticed to implement such program para mapag-focusan yung training. Madam Chair, isa pa ho yung what we wanted to introduce sana at the proper time is that these training-related expenses can be easily claimed as deduction, since some companies, and we have been receiving letters from different companies about the current BIR regulations. They were saying that it's becoming more difficult of the training of apprentices or learners. Hope that that
His Honor's audio is not coming in. The last that
I'm not sure if I was particular.
The last that I heard
My
is
statement was
complaints
cut
about
off.
the last that I heard is complaints about the deductions for apprentices and learners. Is that correct? I mean, Mr. President, if it's an implementation issue, I
Mr.
don't think
President.
CREATE would be the right place for it. But we are happy to look at the amendments that His Honor would like to present. As I committed, I will always be open. So kindly send
Thank you.
your proposals and we can review it and give you a response.
Yes, and will not be extremist naman, Mr. President. Alam naman natin because I'm sure some of our from DOF would be consulted to work with our sponsor tungkol po dito sa particular issue na ito. Moving forward, Mr. President.
Mr. President, may I know from His Honor how many more questions he has? Because since I was informed that we will be extending the period of interpellation for today, I was prepared to stay all night, but most
4 or
have
5,
I
Mr.
have made
President?
appointments, Mr. President, and I need to leave around 5. I messaged His Honor, but I'm sure he was
Yes.
busy with this interpellation and may not have seen it. So I'll be happy to continue.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. President, kahit magbabaran po tayo, but I made that adjustment in my schedule
Okay
given the desire of the majority of the members to extend, if that is okay, that we terminate at this point. Not terminate, sorry, suspend.
Suspend the interpellation.
I'm sorry, distinguished colleague, Senator P. I just got your message. Sorry.
No
Anyway.
problem. I know you were busy interpellating me.
It's all right.
I
Anyway, you can check on your internet connection because it was, for a while, it was gasping for breath.
It's affected by the result of NBA finals in the Eastern Conference, Mr. President. Sorry.
All right. All right. So, what is the pleasure of the sponsor?
Mr. President, with the permission of His Honor, may we continue this interpellation on Monday? And if His Honor has any advanced questions or data that he'd like me to prepare, I will be prepared. But otherwise, on Monday, maybe he can be the first so that we can finish. And I am willing to stay as long as necessary on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, so we can finish it now as agreed in caucus.
All right.
Thank-
I don't see any problem with that.
Thank
Majority
you,
Leader.
thank you. Thank you. Let me thank the distinguished lady from Taguig for her patience and for passionately answering my questions. Thank you, Senator Pia. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
President.
also.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much to Senator Joel and, of course, the distinguished sponsor, Senator Pia Cayetano. Thank you very much. With that, Mr. President, to accommodate our distinguished sponsor, just for the record, we have Senator Joel Villanueva to ask questions on Monday, after which Senator Richard Gordon, and then Senator Recto, and then Senator Drilon. That's the order on Monday. So there are 4 left who we want to interpolate the distinguished lady senator from Taguig. For the record, Mr. President.
Ready,
Mr.
Mr.
President.
President.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you,
Mr.
Senator
President,
Cayetano. All right.
we'd
Yes,
like to move to
Majority Leader.
suspend, Mr. President, consideration of Senate Bill number 1357.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of 1357 is suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration. These are the franchise bills, Mr. President, and we'd like to take them up one by one with the permission of the body. We'd like to resume consideration of House Bill number 6371 under Committee Report number 119. I so move, Mr. President.
Magtatawag ako. Sa taas. Sige. Hindi mo, will you repeat the motion,
Yes.
Majority Leader?
My apologies, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 6371 under Committee Report number 119. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
I move to recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace Poe, Mr. President, and no member wishes to interpolate this measure. I move to close the period of interpolation, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, period interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments and recognize the sponsor for any amendments.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized for any committee or individual amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few amendments. On page 6, line 2, after the word canceled, insert a new sentence which reads as follows. This franchise shall be deemed ipso facto revoked in the event the grantee fails to operate continuously for 2 years. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page 7, delete lines 11 to 21. I so move.
11 to 21. Any objections? No. Wait. Page 7, line 11 to 21. That includes the word except? Yes.
Yes.
So there is a period after Philippines on line 10.
On
Is that
line
right?
10.
Yes, you will put a period after Philippines instead of a comma.
Yes.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On the same page, line 10, replace the comma after the word Philippines with a period, and thereafter
Oh, yes.
insert the words. Congress shall be informed of any sale, lease, transfer, grant of usufruct, or assignment of franchise, or the rights and privileges acquired thereunder, or of the merger or transfer of the controlling interest of the grantee within 60 days after the completion of the transaction. Failure to report to Congress such change of ownership shall render the franchise ipso facto revoked. I so move, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page 8, from lines 3 to 7, delete the words within a period of 3 years from the date of the effectivity of this act, unless the grantee is wholly owned by a publicly listed company with at least 30% of whose authorized capital stock is publicly owned and in lieu thereof, insert the words, within 5 years from the date of the effectivity of this act, provided that in cases where public offer of shares is not applicable, the grantee shall apply other methods of encouraging public participation by citizens and corporations operating public utilities as allowed by law. Non-compliance therewith shall render the franchise ipso facto revoked. I so move.
Subject to style. Any objection? Adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's all.
That's all. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I believe Senator Angara would like to propose an amendment, Mr. President.
Senator Sani Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, Majority Leader. If it's all right with the sponsor, I would like to propose a new section, and renumber the sections accordingly as follows. The title will be Tax Provision. The grantee, its successors, or assignees shall be liable to pay the same taxes on their real estate, buildings, and personal property, exclusive of this franchise, as other persons or corporations which are now or thereafter may be required by law to pay, except radio, telecommunications, and electronic communications equipment, machinery, and spare parts needed in connection with the business of the grantee, which shall be exempt from customs duties, tariffs, and other taxes, as well as those declared exempt in this section. In addition thereto, the grantee, its successors, or assignees shall pay a value-added tax on all gross receipts of the business transacted under this franchise by the grantee, its successors, or assignees in the Philippines in lieu of any and all taxes of any kind, nature, or description levied, established, or collected by an authority whatsoever, including but not limited to city, municipal, provincial, or national, from which the grantee is hereby expressly exempted effective from the date of the effectivity of this act, provided that the grantee, its successors, or assignees shall continue to be liable for income taxes payable under Title II of the National Internal Revenue Code pursuant to Section 2 of Executive Order Number 72, unless the latter enactment is amended or repealed, in which case amendment or repeal shall be applicable thereto. The reason, that's the end of the amendment, Mr. President. The reason is this is found in the other franchises. So just, I guess, as a matter of equality or fairness, I move that it be included. If it's all right with the good chair of the Committee on Public Services, Mr. President.
What section are you proposing that to be inserted into?
It's up to the chair, maybe section 9 or section 10. It's up to the committee, really, subject to style, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
Mr. President, I trust in the good gentleman from Aurora. He's our Senate expert on taxes and also finance. And I know that we are one in our intention to actually help the economy by helping businesses also be able to cope. And so with the rationale provided, as well as the logic behind this, I know that this was proposed in the past. I willingly accept the amendment of Senator Angara, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. Subject to style.
Thank you, good sponsor. The tax expert is Senator Recto, but thank you very much.
The guru is Senator Recto.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, Mr. President, thank you. With that, we close to the period, move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none. Period of amendments closed.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6371 and the committee report number 119. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the third item is House Bill number. I move to resume consideration House Bill number 7507 under committee report number 128. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration is in order.
Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor to sponsor the measure, and I believe we have a few colleagues who would like to propose some interpellations, Mr. President.
All right.
Yes, Mr. President, I'm ready for any interpellations.
Yes, the sponsor is recognized in the period of interpellation.
Does
Yes,
anybody wish
Mr.
to
President,
interpellate?
Senator Ralph Recto had just texted me that he would just like to ask a couple of questions, Mr. President.
All right,
Okay,
so
sure.
Senator Ralph Recto is recognized.
I was told it was a friendly interpellation.
Very friendly, Mr. President, because I support this measure and I support the chairman in sponsoring this measure to begin with. I just wanted to ask a few questions. This will be the first airport franchise that we will be passing. Is that correct? I'm sorry, Grace, but yes.
Yes, that's what I'm aware of. This is the first one, and not only the first one, but the biggest private investment.
Correct. Okay. Now, may I know what the fiscal incentives are in this bill?
Yes,
I wanted to relate this to the create bill that we're discussing, Madam President.
yes, Mr. President, actually, in enacting here, what are the incentives would be during the 10-year construction period. The grantee shall be exempt from any and all direct and indirect taxes. After the 10-year construction period and during the remaining term of this franchise, the grantee shall be exempt from income taxes and real estate taxes, but the said exemption will cease upon a determination that the grantee has fully recovered its investment cost.
Okay. So when will the grantee start paying taxes?
When they've actually recovered its investment cost, Mr.
So
President.
this is not the provision that 12%, anything above 12% goes to the government. Isn't that correct?
Under Section 17 of Senate Bill 1823, SMAI is entitled to generate income from the airport city equivalent to a projected project internal rate of return of 12% per annum. Any amount in excess of 12% IRR of the airport city shall be remitted to the government.
Okay. I just wanted to point this out, Madam President. One, this is the biggest investment, private sector investment ever in this country, more so now during a pandemic. It is most welcome. Okay? Having said that, we've been discussing also the CREATE bill. Okay? The incentives provided here seem to be more generous than the ones in the CREATE bill. Did the Department of Finance agree to this?
Mr. President, from my understanding, there have been numerous consultations with the NEDA board. And of course, we know that the Secretary of Finance is member of the NEDA. So I suppose that it passed through his muster also the provisions here. But one thing is clear, while in the CREATE bill, we provide incentives to the private sector. In this particular case, we are also pump priming the economy by providing special incentives because this is, as you mentioned, the biggest investment so far.
Correct.
And their needs are very specific.
Yes.
So since it's a franchise, we take the opportunity now to tailor fit the incentive to their particular needs so that if they succeed, we will obviously succeed as well.
Yes. All I'm saying, Madam President, is that assuming we follow the CREATE bill here, let's say income tax holiday of, I don't know if it's 3 to 5 years, 4 to 6 years, plus 10% gross income tax. This project will not materialize, isn't it?
Well, Mr. President, for them to be able to pay taxes, they actually have to be earning already, and to apply the CREATE bill word per word
Yeah.
to this particular endeavor, it might not be quite
Okay.
effective.
Yes. So I'm just saying, and I support it. All I'm saying is that, in addition to, well, all I'm saying is that I think we should welcome this investment. Okay. It is the most transparent also that I've seen, in the sense that it goes through the House, it goes through the Senate, pumasa rin sa NEDA board with regard to the project proposal as a BOT project. Okay? So we're not just passing it to the discretion of the executive, the FIRB, or in the past, let's say the BOI. Okay? And the incentives provided here are more generous, which is commensurate to the project or the investment being undertaken. I just wanted to manifest that and to put that on record. And like I said, I do support this project, and I understand that there will be another bill coming along the way, the creation of a special economic zone in Bulacan, which is a counterpart measure of this bill. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of the counterpart measure, Mr.
Okay.
Gus, but I think it will make sense to do
Yeah, there's a
that.
bigger project. No? So again, I thank the sponsor, and may I be a co-author of the measure with the permission of the sponsor.
Gladly, Mr. President, and I thank the gentleman or the senator from Batangas for his support.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. President, next in line to manifest was Senator Bongo, with the permission of Senator Julon, or would you like to go ahead, Senator Julon? Okay, Senator Bongo, Mr. President, would like to be recognized.
Yes, Senator Christopher Bongo is recognized. And by the way, perhaps what the President Pro Tem means is that he be made a co-sponsor of the measure because it's a House bill. All right. And
I
the
accept.
Senate President, this representation wishes to be a co-sponsor also. Thank you. The Majority Leader? Next is Senator
May we recognize
Christopher
Senator
Bongo.
Christopher Bongo, Mr. President.
Yes, Senator Bongo is recognized.
Mr. President, good afternoon. I do not have any questions for the good sponsor. I just want to manifest my support for House Bill number 7507 under Committee Report 128, which grants San Miguel Aerocity Incorporated a franchise to construct, develop, establish, operate, and maintain a domestic and international airport in the municipality of Bulacan, province of Bulacan, and to construct, develop, establish, operate, and maintain an adjacent airport city. During the committee hearing of the Committee on Public Services, a number of our colleagues have already declared their support for the measure. Among them, Senators Villanueva and Gatchalian, who hold the province of Bulacan very close to their hearts, shared how the people of Bulacan have longed for this project to come into fruition. Mr. President, this project is a prime example of how the public and private sectors can work hand in hand in building a better future for our people. Like I said, this will go a long way towards providing jobs and other economic opportunities outside Metro Manila, and will help decongest our urban areas. Napakarami pong matutulungan ng pagtayo ng airport na ito. This is also in line with the Balik Probinsya Bagong Pag-asa program na aking sinusulong para mahikayat magbalik probinsya ang ating mga kababayan. Kasama na rin dito ang pag-improve ng mga infrastruktura, pagbibigay ng trabaho, pag-angat ng antas ng buhay sa mga karatig lugar, at pag-decongest ng Metro Manila. The establishment of this airport will help us realize these goals. Dinidiin ko lamang po na dapat maobserbahan at masunod ang mga batas, rules, and regulation when it comes to the environment, labor, and all other pertinent laws. Also, I would like to thank the good sponsor for her request to this representation during the committee hearing to provide assistance where needed to achieve the objectives of this measure. Your request is duly noted, Madam Sponsor, and we will do what we can do to support you in achieving these objectives. Having said that, I wish to convey my intention to co-sponsor this measure Thank you, Mr. President. And also, Mr. President, I just want to briefly mention my support for the granting of an extension of the franchise of Double Light and Power Company under good management and leadership of Aboitiz. We know that Double Light can continue to provide for the electricity needs of its consumers, always at a reasonable cost. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Franklin Drilon, after which Senator Joel Villanueva.
Excuse me, Mr. President. I would just like to manifest my thanks to the senator from Davao. I really appreciate your support here, and I am glad that you reiterated your commitment for your support. It makes a big difference, and we are looking forward because this will be a flagship project that is built under the administration of President Duterte. Thank you, Mr. President.
May we recognize the distinguished minority floor leader, sir, and Mr. President.
The Minority Leader, Senator Frank Drilon, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the lady sponsor yield the floor to just a few clarificatory questions?
My pleasure, Mr. President, from our minority leader from Iloilo.
Thank you very much, Madam Sponsor. And I will just follow on the line of questioning of the Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Recto. Yes, indeed, the proposed incentives granted here would be far superior to the proposed incentives program under the CREATE bill. That's on the record. And certainly, the incentives are probably more liberal and superior in this case because of the investment, because of the exposure that the proponent has committed for this project. And therefore, that justifies the grant of, or the request for incentives, which is commensurate to the exposure of the proponent. Now, the issue I would like to raise is, under the proposed CREATE, if we pass it in the manner that it is crafted today, will give the FIRB the power to revise incentives, if I recall the law correctly. In this particular case, since it is the Congress which grants the incentive, would you agree with me, Madam Sponsor, that such incentives granted here cannot be revised by the FIRB under its general power under the CREATE bill?
I would think so, Mr. President, because Congress also has the power to actually grant all of these incentives. And if this is specific to one particular franchise, I would say that it would take superior precedence over any other bill. And I think it would also be, or what I would like to clarify though is if the grantee would have an option to choose which incentive it will apply, but I would say that what we are giving to them now is more in tune to the needs that they will that they have to be able to succeed in this project.
Yes, Madam Sponsor, precisely that's what we're saying. The incentives granted here are specifically made because of the very big exposure that the grantee is willing to make with the building of the airport. And in other words, this is this can be akin or similar to a contract entered into between the grantee, which is San Miguel Corporation, and Congress, and the Philippine government through Congress. In other words, what the grantee is asking for is give us this incentive and we will build the airport. So that it is on that premise that we are granting these incentives in consideration of the substantial investment that the proponent is going to make, as distinguished from the powers of the FIRB, which are under the proposed Create Bill, which is general in nature, and therefore would not be proper to subject the will of Congress to the decision of the FIRB once we pass that. Certainly, the decision of Congress in this particular case is superior to that of the FIRB's power, which is only a delegated power of Congress, because the power to grant incentives in effect fix the taxes to be paid is a function of Congress, not the we delegate certain portions of that to the FIRB in general. But in this particular case, the grant is specific to the applicant because of and in consideration of the investment and the public interest involved. This is a huge airport. It's an airport, and in other words, there is public interest involved, and therefore it is within the plenary powers of Congress to grant the incentive in the manner that it wishes. And I would repeat, this is similar to a contract entered into between the government and the grantee, in that the grantee will commit to invest this huge amount of money for the building of an airport. In exchange, the state would be willing to grant incentives through an act of Congress, which should which should be an exception to the general powers of the FIRB to revise incentives. I just want to make that of record if the sponsor will agree with that proposition.
Mr. President, I thank the good minority leader for pointing that out and for including that in our records today, so that it's an easy reference as to the intention, the actual intention of the lawmakers with regards to this law. The difference I feel about the Create Bill and the other incentives, those are not mere, but those are regulations. Whereas in this case, it's almost like a binding contract also with the government, meaning to say that the prerequisite of having to invest and risk in such a huge endeavor needs some sort of commitment from the government. So as the good minority leader pointed out, this should be more superior than the regulations that will be formulated by the FIRB. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you, Madam Sponsor, for concurring with that view, because it's very important. We repeat, this in effect is a contract between the government and the grantee, the commitment being to invest billions of pesos for a project that is to public interest, in exchange certain concessions in terms of a preferential incentive rate is being proposed. And once agreed upon, and once this becomes law, just for the record, FIRB cannot revise it, notwithstanding the general powers granted to it under the Create Bill. With that, thank you very much, Mr. President, Madam Chair, Madam Sponsor, for putting that on record, and so that the investor will feel comfortable that indeed the FIRB's powers will be limited insofar as this is concerned, as this set of incentives are enacted directly by. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you to the minority leader for the clarification.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I believe Senator Richard Dick Gordon would also like to make a manifestation. We recognize the distinguished gentleman from Olongapo and Subic and Central Luzon.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Senator
President.
Richard Gordon is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and Majority Floor Leader. I strongly support this new airport that is going to be built solely by San Miguel Corporation without any money being put in by the government. Would that be correct, ma'am? Distinguished sponsor?
Yes, Mr. President.
There's no money out. And
No
in
money
return
out
for
in the
that,
government.
he
That's
would
why
be
the
exempt.
incentives are there.
The corporation would be exempt from all direct, indirect taxes, real estate taxes, and fees of any kind, nature, or description which emanate exclusively from the construction, development, establishment, and operation of the airport and airport city, including income taxes, value-added taxes, percentage taxes, excise taxes, documentary stamp taxes, customs duties and tariffs, taxes on real estate, buildings and personal property, business taxes, franchise taxes, and supervision fees levied, established, or collected as may be levied, established, by collected by any city, municipal, provincial, or national authority. That sounds like a very, very hefty benefit, Your Honor.
Yes, indeed it is. It's also, as mentioned by the good minority leader, commensurate to the risk also being taken by the private sector. In enacting Senate Bill 1823, Congress deems the tax benefits to be granted under the franchise as acceptable incentives in order to attain the objectives of job creation, pump priming, and business activity stimulation, among others. As stated by Congressman Salceda, the foregone taxes arising from the grant of tax incentives under the franchise are just nominal. If the airport and the airport city does not happen, much of this would not be raised in the first place. And as succinctly summarized by Congressman Salceda, the fiscal cost is worth it. We can't build it ourselves with the limited resources that we have. In the meantime, that within the period that they're still trying to recoup their investments, Mr. President, the airport, hopefully, well, the airport will already be running. It will definitely decongest Metro Manila. There will be roads leading to the airport. A lot of our countrymen can find employment in the Bulacan area. NAIA will be congested. The MRT 7 will go straight there. The price of land is a little bit lower, although it's going up because of the development. Therefore, people can actually choose to relocate and live there. Real estate taxes will go up. So even if there is a stay in the paying of property taxes or real estate taxes for the airport itself, the surrounding areas will develop, generating more taxes for the local government there. So there's always an upside for the government by giving this incentive for the airport to actually be built.
That sounds like an argument for our position that we should lower income taxes but don't take away the investments because of the multiplier effect that is going to happen from the construction of this behemoth of an airport. Would that be correct, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Uh,
I agree. I think I understand your question, so I agree.
Yes. Now, when this airport opens, obviously it will attract other industries. Airports do attract a lot of industries. They will be attracting a lot of cargo operations, warehousing. Certainly, there will be a lot of businesses like restaurants, duty-free shops, and not to mention the fact that you are going to have a lot of support in terms of infrastructure, roads leading to it. Who will take care of the roads leading to the airport? Will it be the airport, the San Miguel?
Mr. President, from what I understand, there's a certain portion that's already being taken care of by San Miguel because from my notes here, they actually, the infra, the toll roads leading to it under the franchise, it still needed NEDA and TRB approval. And that was actually granted to San Miguel. So yes, I think that a huge portion of the roads leading to the airport will be undertaken by San Miguel Corporation. In fact, the MRT 7 is already an SMC project. So I think that there will be some sort of cohesion in the planning as well as the time and well, the planning and also the compatibility with the projected function of that airport and its airport city.
Obviously,
Just
there
to
will be
add,
no rules.
just to add to the answer or to the question of Senator Gordon, yes, the answer is yes. I know for a fact that the roads leading to the airport will all be connected to the NLEX and the new super highways that also San Miguel is building, for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President. I gather that because it's such a very important project for our country. By the way, just as a matter of information, I think we discussed this in the committee meeting. This will be the first airport built in the country in perhaps a long, long, long time. There have been other airports built, but they've just been reconditioned, if you will, or expanded. Would that be
Yes,
correct, ma'am? And
I
of course,
agree.
ma'am, with the airport here now, Central Luzon and Metro Manila, and with that highway connecting the North Expressway to the South Expressway leading to the Batangas, there will now be a total of 4 major airports: Subic, Clark, Manila International Airport, and of course, Bulacan Airport. And then it will have access to seaports like Subic, like Mariveles, like Manila Bay, and even Batangas Port. Would that be correct, ma'am?
Well, yes, I know that this was actually discussed by the good senator from Subic, Zambales, that you pointed out the many airports in London itself.
That's
I think
correct.
there's yes, and you cited very good examples, and I know that
London, Paris, LA, New York, for example, has access to about 5 airports: LaGuardia, JFK,
right,
Newark.
and which actually can complement each other, and in fact even compete with each other with better services, so that they can get more passengers to use their airport hub. So I know that the good gentleman is an expert on tourism and has done a lot for Subic. So your support on this measure is indeed valuable.
Well, I'm really not an expert. I just do what I have to do, madam. But of course, in terms of
That's
airport,
more than half the battle, sir.
we rebuilt the airport, and that's how I learned all these airports facilities, Your Honor. And that is why it's so important. And that's why I've been advocating for the rich bill for a long time. You know, Mr. Marcos, in fairness to Amy Marcos's father, wanted to decongest Manila Bay. He wanted to congest Manila. I remember that. He wanted to disperse industries. He wanted to make sure that Manila would not be crowded and that we would be able to go north and south and that it would be the beginning of modernization of the country. I remember Bobby Umpin and I talked about that a lot. And that's why when you look at the rich bill that I was proposing that was approved, and I'm still following it up, you can see the practicability now of there will be a boom. And in 1995, I came out with what I call the Hong Kong strategy with my young staff, some from Harvard, from Wharton, from Stanford, and some consultants from Hong Kong and from others. And what we wanted to do was actually build Subic up, build Clark up, use all the airports and seaports, and then utilize all the lands around Central Luzon and allow it to have, like, Senator Villar would be perfect for this. She could actually help subdivide the industrial parks in the area. She could set aside 100 hectares, 200 hectares, and put this as possible investment areas, Mr. President. And that is why I think that this idea is something that has to be undertaken real fast, because after COVID, there will be a mad rush for investments, and we have to make ourselves look very good. And certainly the prospect of a very major international airport with all the other airports in Subic, Clark, and Manila, and the ports, like I told you, would certainly make the Philippines very attractive to all these possible people who are now changing the paradigm. China is no longer going to be the manufacturing hub of the world. It will be distributed as we talk now. It's being distributed to Indonesia. They have $850 million worth of investments going to Indonesia. And there are also other investments that are going to other places, such as Vietnam with 39 firms, Thailand with 23 firms, Indonesia alone with 6 firms has $850 million. And the Philippines is only getting, I think, 3, Mr. President. Now, with the promise of this major airport, it is going to make sure it is going to be a very big selling point, apart from the strategic location of our country vis-a-vis Asia, away from the mainland, which is like England to Europe, away from the battles that are and the wars that go into the mainland. I think this will be very, very good for our country, Madam President. I can see Senator Dillon agreeing in laughter. But anyway, Mr. President, I think that it's very, very important. For example, LG and Panasonic have already indicated that they're going to go to Indonesia, and they will have $850 million worth of investments. And by the way, just as a point of information, in the case of Vietnam, Vietnam was able to get Samsung, Mr. President, and Samsung alone is able to export $67 billion, Mr. President. $67 billion in 2019. It was 65.8 billion from Vietnam total exports, and in 2018 it's 67.1 billion, or 27% of Vietnam total exports. And the exports of the Philippines is in 2019 $53.4 billion. So one company out of Vietnam beats all our exports. Now, I understand that when you build this airport, knowing what FedEx did for us and what could have been done when FedEx was here, which we failed to do because we were always grappling in political intramurals, Mr. President, Madam President, Mr. President. FedEx left us. And you know, now the world is now, I told you in the past several times, FedEx may be leaving China because it's having a hard time because of the trade war. And now, Mr. President, if we get this airport here, I'm sure not only FedEx will come here, but all the airplanes. I understand it costs about $1 per kilo for passenger cargo, for cargo, ma'am, no? So you can imagine if all these planes come to Subic, to Bulacan, we can now compete with Vietnam. Now, via $1, via FedEx, they can cost anywhere from $25 to $40 per kilo. So now, if you have all these planes coming, and because we will have 4 runways here, you can now really become the airport of the Philippines. This is really a game changer. Central Luzon will be a game changer. Senator Pangilinan, Senator Villanueva, yours truly, and other senators from Central Luzon will be extremely happy, and that's not the reason why we are very, very happy. We can make now tremendous leapfrog into being in the world of competitiveness. And because this airport will be there, then you can add now the industrial parks that we want to build out of the vacant lands in Central Luzon. If you go to NLEX now, you can see a lot of buildings going up. These are all warehouses because Manila is congested. They warehouse out of Bulacan, and they bring the cargo when they're needed. And that was the vision of FedEx and Senator Gordon when we were there, that we would put them all these warehouses in the old igloos that eventually we will demolish and put bigger warehouses so that any company can put their warehouse, their equipment or their parts in advance in the Pacific. And anytime anybody orders, they don't have to call America, they don't have to call Europe, and they will just withdraw from the logistics hub of Subic. And this will also happen, I'm sure, with the Bulacan Airport, Madam President. Just as a matter of information, Madam President. So it would really appear to be worth it that although right now, and I will repeat this argument again later on, right now you have raw land what is being obtained by the government is simply real estate taxes that are not even worth the salt. So if you put in this major investment, you will be able to get real estate taxes from those who are going to go near the area and start giving the government a lot of real estate revenue for local government. And the building construction that will follow through will mean our economy will be really intensified. And I think this is the kind of thing that we are really waiting. And I can see Senator Angara giving me the 2 thumbs up, because now you will have APECO, you will have Subic, Clark, and maybe Senator Angara and I, with the help of the Senate, can finally bring that canal that we want to put up from Atimonan, Quezon, all the way to Manila Bay, going to the West Philippine Sea from the Pacific Ocean, and that all these other countries, all these other carriers will no longer have to circumnavigate the Philippines, but they can go straight smack into Pacific coast of the Philippines and go direct to Manila. I think that is something that we can do, and for that matter, even all the tourism ships, that cruise ships, will also want to be there, because they will always want to be with 4 airports, so that whenever they leave, they can go leave right away in case of emergencies, or when they change cruise, it can be a major hub for changing cruise. So, Madam President, I think I've already delivered my sponsorship speech. But anyway, I'm just saying that I'm very enthusiastic about this. As you know, I have really, along with our volunteers and staff, put in a lot in Subic and in Clark and in AFAB. And really, with this now, we can really be very confident that we can start doing this, not only here, but throughout the entire country. I think Senator Villanueva is trying to count his land in Bukawi, because his land in Bukawi will appreciate with wild abandon. Magbigay ka naman ng konti. Thank you very much, Madam President. Mr. President, that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We appreciate the optimism and also the insights of the good senator from Zambales.
Thank you, Mr. President. We truly appreciate the insights of our dear gentleman from Zambales. May kanal pa po yan. That's something that we can look forward to. The canal linking Aurora and saan po siya papunta?
Quezon.
Go rich, Bill. Go rich.
Okay. Yes, that's the next that we will approve. Mr. President, we'd like to
recognize the majority floor leader that I'm also thinking of a canal in between Pagadian and Marawi, so that all the ships coming from Davao don't have to go around the Davao Gulf and go to Zamboanga, where they could be attacked by Abu Sayyaf. They could have a canal, and they will have that there. You know, Mr. President, it's about time that we start building gargantuan projects such as this, because that will give our country confidence. I know some of you...
That's an absolutely wonderful idea, Mr. President.
We have to make our dreams come true. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
That's what I like about the senator from Zambales. He is a future thinker. Those are the mega projects that will actually make the country great. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr. as well, Mr. President.
Senator Bong Revilla is recognized.
Mr. President, as I have manifested during the committee hearing, I give my full support to the measure granting San Miguel Aerocity Inc. a franchise. It cannot be overemphasized the boost to our economy and development in Bulacan this airport can give. Malaki po ang tulong nito sa ating ekonomiya, ang maibibigay ng airport na ito. At malaki din po ang maitutulong nito in the decongesting na NAIA and traffic in Metro Manila. We're looking forward to this project, Mr. President. Having said that, may I humbly request that I be made co-author of House Bill 7507 with the kind permission of the sponsor, Senator Poe. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes,
you,
Mr.
Mr. President.
It will be it will be my pleasure.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, all those who spoke in favor of the project, we can make a co-sponsor, Mr. President. All those who spoke in favor. So that's
Ako
Senator
din, Majo, please. Ako din,
Senator
co-author,
Villa,
please.
Senator Sani Angara, Senator Eileen Marcos is raising her hand. Of course, Senator Joel Villanueva, Senator Nancy Binay, and of course, myself as well, Mr. President, to be made a co-sponsor. I just like to put on record, Mr. President, that in my sponsorship of I also filed a measure, the same measure as a Senate bill number. And sponsorship of that during the committee, I said very simply that this project should have been built 4 years ago. We should have allowed him to build it 4 years ago at no cost to government, not a single centavo lost by government. We will have a world-class airport that will make us very proud, just how NAIA 3 made us proud when it first opened several decades ago, or a decade and a half ago. Now NAIA 3 is so outdated, and the airport is so small. We really need a brand new airport, Mr. President. Airports are the gateway to the country. When you arrive to a country, Mr. President, your first impression is the airport. I haven't been to Vietnam at all in my whole lifetime until I had to go last year for a friend's wedding. And when I went and landed in Ho Chi Minh City, I felt so sad, Mr. President. I felt so sad for our country. And then I flew to Da Nang because the wedding was in Da Nang. And then I got even sadder because their airport in Da Nang was so beautiful. It rivaled our top airports, Mr. President. So I just want to put on record my full support for this measure, Mr. President. And I believe that we should pass this immediately so that they can already start construction of this airport. Mr. President, I see two people raising their hand. Senator Joel Villanueva, Mr. President, first, after which Senator Gordon, Mr. President.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name was mentioned a while ago after Senator Drilon, but I'm sure all of us were mesmerized, especially the majority leader was mesmerized by the presentation. And we all can't wait for the Angara Canal, Mr. President. But kidding aside, Mr. President, again, I've been saying this is a dream come true for Bulaqueños and from the people of Central Luzon. We have been talking about this for quite some time. It's been a while. Senate Majority Floor Leader made mention about this. It's been 4 or 5 years of delay. Mr. President, imagine this beautiful project that will decongest our airports, that will at least generate 1 million jobs at no cost to the government, with no government guarantees. And Mr. President, I would just like to put this on record. Ang mga Bulakenyo po ay sanay tumanaw ng utang na loob. At gaya ng sabi natin, ito'y isang malaking pangarap na aming inaasam-asam. Naniniwala po kami na malaking tulong po ito at hindi ho namin makakalimutan ang pagtulong na ibinigay ng ating mga kasamahan dito po sa Senado. Let me also spread into the records, and this representation would want to be associated with the statements made by Senator Senate President Pro Temp Ralph Recto and Senator Frank Drilon na ito pong batas at prangkisa na ating ibinibigay. The Congress indeed has superior powers over the grant of any incentives in franchises being given or will be given by the fiscal incentives and review board. So I hope that will be spread into the records. And again, last but not the least, let me ask the distinguished sponsor to consider this representation as your co-sponsor of this measure being from Bulacan. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo. Maraming salamat sa ating mga kasamahan.
Mr. President, I accept and it is my pleasure to accept as co-sponsor of the measure. Senator Villanueva.
Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Dick Gordon once again.
Senator Richard Gordon is recognized.
The majority floor, may I have the permission of the Senate President and the majority floor leader to consider my remarks as a sponsorship speech, Mr. President. In fact, kinapos pa nga ho yun dahil I was going to describe the fact that In London, there are 5 airports or 6 airports. Just in case any doubting Thomases are still around. London has Gatwick, Heathrow, London Luton Airport, London Stansfield Airport, and London Southend Airport. And Senator Angara is very familiar with that. In New York, John F. Kennedy Airport, LaGuardia Airport, Long Island, MacArthur Airport, Newark Liberty International Airport, Seawharf International Airport, and Westchester County Airport, where former President Clinton lives. In Los Angeles, Mr. President, Hollywood Burbank Airport, John Way Airport, Ontario International Airport, Long Beach Airport, and Los Angeles International Airport, Mr. President. And then in the Seattle area, Seattle Tacoma International Airport, Boeing Field, Payne Field, Canmore Air Harbor, Seaplane Base, Canmore Air Harbor, and also you have them in Melbourne, Abaton Airport, Essendon Airport, Melbourne Airport, Moonrabin Airport, and of course in Paris, we have Charles de Gaulle Airport, Orly Airport, Beauvais Airport, Chalon Vatry Airport, and in Moscow, Vnukovo International Airport, Sheremetyevo International Airport, Zhukovsky International Airport, Domodedovo International Airport. Mr. President, this is just an indication. All the great countries of the world are really putting up a lot of airports because aviation has really grown by leaps and bounds. And it will continue to grow by leaps and bounds. And for the first time, we may be a little bit ahead of the pack if we start this because already our airports are built in these areas. One of the things that really pained me is that when I left and when FedEx left Subic, the airport was closed, Mr. President, practically. We lost our radar, we lost our ILS, lost our landing lights. And now I've been trying during this term to fix up that airport. And I've been promised that it will be built, Mr. President. I think it's important that we communicate right away. I'm certainly communicating with DOTR, and they say they're going to open the airport in Subic Bay. If only to address the fact that many people sacrificed their time and their hardships to guard Subic, and nothing was lost in Subic, Mr. President. And yet, what did we get for it? People have forgotten it already. The sacrifice was really magnificent. Almost 29,000 people volunteered. They cleaned up houses that did not belong to them. They ran the electric power corporation there, and they ran the seaport, even catching some of our bad soldiers. Some bad soldiers tried to steal the ship to shore electric connectivity. And that is why I am very, very happy to support this because finally it will all enhance the entire central Luzon all the way to northern Luzon. I'm sure this will have an effect and all the way down to southern Luzon. And this will be, like Rich, hopefully a model for all the regions of the country. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I hope the President will favor me with allowing me to have stated my sponsorship speech, Mr. President.
Yes, that will be so recorded as.
Thank you, sir.
Majority
Mr.
Leader.
President, yeah, just for the record, Mr. President, we have two other colleagues who had manifested to interpolate, but I think he's not around. Senator Risa Ontiveros and Senator Kiko Pangilinan, although we reached out to them today to interpolate. But Senator Joel, I think, wants to be recognized, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Senator
if there
Villarreal.
is no other member who wish to interpolate, I will move, Mr. President, to close the period of interpellation and debates. That's if with the permission of the body.
May I, Mr. President?
Senator
I will,
Villarreal is recognized.
Mr. President, in fairness, in view of the absence of the two senators who placed on record that they want to interpolate, maybe we can close the interpellation if that is the wish of the committee, subject to the condition that if the two senators would want to interpolate, we can reopen the period of interpellation. I think that should be a fair setup because I do not want to set a precedent where where a senator would have indicated that he would want to interpolate, and for some reason he or she cannot be in the hall, that we just close the period of interpellation. If I would repeat, if it is the pleasure of the committee, then yes, we go ahead and close, but subject to the condition that it can be reopened if the two of our colleagues would want to avail of the period of interpellation. That's my submission, Mr. President.
May we recognize Senator Gordon, Mr. President?
Senator Gordon is recognized.
I wholeheartedly support the gentlemanly and certainly respectful way. I'm not saying Senator Villanueva is not respectful. I think he's just eaten up by his enthusiasm. Youthful exuberance is what we call it, Mr. President. And of course, I would just like to say and support Senator Lawrence that Senator Pangilinan is from Pampanga, Mr. President, and I think he should be allowed to speak. And also, in behalf of the women, certainly our good friend Senator Risa Ontiveros should be allowed to speak. And I believe in that tradition that when somebody expresses his desire or her desire to sponsor it, they should be allowed at the next hearing. I submit, Mr. President.
Mr. President, let me just
yeah.
state for the record, Mr. President, that's why I'm very careful and very respectful of asking the permission of my dear colleagues. How can I refute the wisdom coming from the distinguished gentleman from Iloilo and the gentleman from Zambales, who are both my mentors, Mr. President? Just want to put that on record.
Yes. I just want to remind our colleagues also the difficulty that this faces, because if we do not approve this week, we have the interpellations back on Monday. Technically, we can only approve it on third reading on the last week of session. And if there is a problem with the bicameral conference committee, knowing fully well there is a problem now in the House of Representatives, this may not pass until we get back on session on November. And that is why it will delay the process. I'm just putting that on the record, Mr. President, for the body to digest, Mr. President. But I agree with Senator Drilon. If you want, there's just a few committee amendments. Maybe we can close temporarily the period of amendment. Period of interpellation. Let's do the period of amendment, and then close the period of amendment, and then we wait till next week. And then if they would like to ask questions, we open the period of interpellation once again, Mr. President.
Yes, we can do that, Mr. President. I just want, together with Senator Gordon, we just do not want this to be a precedent where a colleague of ours would request for an opportunity to ask questions, and then we would prevent them from doing so. On the other hand, to balance it with the desire of the majority to expedite the passage of measures, then a compromise is what I am suggesting. We close the period of interpellation in order that the amendments of the committee can be introduced, but it is our understanding that we can suspend the rules on Monday and allow an interpellation to take place. And maybe we can even, we can even have a situation where the interpellation can take place without reconsidering the period of closure or amendment. I mean, we can do anything. We can suspend the rules. But just the point is, at bottom, we should not deprive our colleague of the opportunity to ask questions in the period of interpellation. That is not our tradition, Mr. President.
All right. The majority leader, if I
Maybe
may.
I can make a request, Mr. President, maybe to expedite. Yes, Mr. President. Go ahead.
Yes, if I may. We need not suspend the rules if we wish to terminate the period of interpellation, go into the period of amendments, and close the period of amendments. And if Monday comes, we can reopen the period of amendments, and we always allow any interpellation in the period of amendments as we have done before, and there is no need for a suspension of the rules in that case, if ever. No, and also they can ask questions even before a motion to reconsider. That's possible.
Yes.
So also, as far as the manifestation of the minority leader is concerned, yes, it has been a practice before na pinagbibigyan natin yung mga kasama natin. They're not here to ask questions, but they're not here din naman talaga eh. Because they can use the telephone or the internet or if they really want to ask questions, you know, they could have done it tonight. That is the sad part about it because we're in a different situation because of the pandemic. There are only 2 or 3 members of the Senate who are here, but we are here. And those who are virtually present could have asked questions if they wanted to. But nevertheless, it has been the practice. Kaya lang, iniisip nga natin, ibang klase ito, ibang klase rin itong pinapasa natin na ito eh. This is the first time in the history of the Philippines that a private corporation will do something, will do the government a favor, which it has been doing in the past so many months. They have been, that is just my manifestation that I would like to place on record.
Mr. President, may I make a suggestion? Of course, that all depends on the consensus of the body. If we just request that we finish this on Monday, and with the permission of the Senate President and our colleagues and the Minority Floor Leader, maybe we can open, Mr. President. So maybe we can
You're
schedule
talking of
for
next
Thursday
Thursday.
morning to approve on third reading on Thursday, if it's all right with the Minority Floor Leader.
No problem. We used to have during the time of Senator Soto and myself in the old Congress, we have sessions on Thursday morning.
I
So-
thought you were not going to admit na ako lang yun.
So yun lang siguro po ang formula natin po. Yes. So that could be the formula, Mr. President, with the permission of the body, with the permission. And it seems the minority is agreeable, Mr. President, Minority Floor Leader.
Right.
So we can take this up again on Monday, but
Okay.
we can do the amendments now if there are amendments
Yes.
by the committee.
Yes, Mr. President, let's do the amendments now. Mr. President, I just have to.
Then let's close the period of interpellation in the meantime.
Clear. I just wanted to put on record as part of my co-sponsorship that like the T-Plex Road, the extension of the Star Road that they're doing now, the TR4, the SLEX, NLEX Road, the MRT7 Road, and now the airport. And they're one of the highest taxpayers in the country. So I just wanted to put that off record, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Villar is recognized.
Yeah, I want to correct Senator Recto. T-Plex is DPWH. Lahat ng road na yun, DPWH, not DOTR. Only
Correct.
the railroad is DOTR.
Yes, Mr. President. So I move, Mr. President.
All right, any objection? Hearing none, period of interpellation is closed.
I move to open the period of interpellation and recognize our distinguished sponsor, Senator Grace Poe.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized for the period of amendments.
Period of amendments, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Mr. President, I have one individual. I have one individual amendment for this measure. On section 15, page 3, line 19. After the sentence ending with the phrase airport city, insert the following. Any provision of existing laws, ordinances, executive orders, rules or regulations to the contrary notwithstanding, the lands that will compromise the airport and the adjacent airport city and the right of way thereto are hereby declared as agricultural and are hereby converted and reclassified as mixed use, commercial, and or industrial, and may be used by the grantee, its successors, or assignees for industrial, commercial, and other lawful purposes. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
That's all, Mr. President. I believe that's the only amendment. I move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments closed.
So for the meantime, Mr. President, with the agreement that we'll tackle this again Monday and hopefully close it on second reading on Monday with the a special session on Thursday. Actually, not a special session, but a quick session on Thursday for third reading. I move to suspend consideration of House Bill number 7507. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we
President,
resume.
I have a clarificatory question.
Yes, Senator Pro.
Since we already ended the period of amendments, and we will allow extend the courtesy to our two colleagues or whoever would want to interpolate on Monday. Does
Yeah,
it
we can.
mean that we can still open the period of amendment again?
We have two options. We can perhaps allow them to ask questions. Or if it is necessary, then we may be able to entertain a motion to reopen the period of amendments.
But the amendment that I introduced is already accepted as it stands.
Yes, so it's already accepted. We were just opening the possibility to allow a member to ask questions, and we usually do that also in the period of amendments, so that we need not go back to motions thereafter and open the period of interpellation.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the motion was already to suspend, right, Mr. President? So we agreed to that
Yes,
already.
it's already
Yeah.
suspended.
So I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 6836 under Committee Report number 126. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
This is the Davao Power and Light, Mr. President. I move that we recognize Senator Grace Poe to sponsor the measure.
Senator Grace Post recognized. Sponsor the
Mr.
measure.
President, no member wishes to interpolate this measure. I move to close the period of interpellation.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of interpellation and ask the sponsor if there are, move to open the period of amendments and ask the sponsor for any amendments, Mr. President.
Senator Poe is recognized for the period of amendments.
Mr. President, I just have one amendment. On page 4, lines 32 to 34, delete the colon and the words provided further that the dispersal of ownership by a parent company of the grantee shall be considered as compliance by the grantee with this provision. I so move.
You are removing this particular
Yes,
provision.
Mr. President.
All right.
And
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted. Senator Servan Gatchalian is recognized.
Mr. President, I also have some amendments.
Individual amendments now.
Individual amendments.
Yes, go ahead.
Just minor amendments, Mr. Chair, for consistency's sake. On page 2, line 36, replace the word costly with the word cost. So moved, Mr. President.
In the least cost manner. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page 2, line 40, delete the phrase reasonable and just. So moved.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On the same page and line, insert the phrase in a least cost manner after the phrase power rates. So moved.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page 3, line 12, insert the phrase for as long as it is in effect after the phrase end users. So moved, Mr. President.
I beg the indulgence of my colleagues. Probably the time is keeping me off my balance. Does the sponsor accept? I forgot to ask.
I can't.
I was wondering if you were an autopilot, Mr. President, but I have my full trust in you. So if you say accepted, no objection.
Accepted. Were the amendments that previously mentioned acceptable to you?
They are all acceptable to me, Mr. President. In fact, I've had a copy in advance, so I am agreeable to them.
All right, thank you. Accepted, no objection, adopted.
And lastly, Mr. President, on the same page, and line, insert comma, and the phrase as amended after the phrase Republic Act number 9136. So move, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
I agree, Mr. President.
Huh?
I accept, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page 5, line 22, delete the word "and" after the word "amended." So move, Mr. President.
I accept, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Adopted.
And lastly, Mr. President, on the same page and line, insert comma and the phrase "as amended," comma, Republic Act number 9513, comma, or the Renewable Energy Act of 2008, comma, Republic Act number 11361, or the Anti-Obstruction of Power Lines Act, comma, and other applicable laws, after the phrase Republic Act number 9136.
What does the sponsor say?
I accept, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
That's it, Mr. President. Thank you very much, Madam
Thank you.
Sponsor.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, we move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments closed.
I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6836 under Committee Report number 126. So move.
Any objection? Hearing none. House Bill 6836 is approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 6835 under Committee Report number 127.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
May we recognize the sponsor, Mr. President, to sponsor the measure? This is the Metro Turf Club. And I'd like to put on record, Mr. President, that there was an amendment that I proposed in the committee. I had the amendment removed so that this is the same measure, and the sponsor can confirm this. This is the same measure that had come from the House, Mr. President.
The exact
Yes,
measure.
I confirm,
Yes.
Mr. President.
Therefore, Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate. I move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendment and recognize the sponsor for any committee amendments.
Senator Grace Post recognized for any amendments?
Mr. President, there are no committee amendments.
No committee amendments.
Thank you,
Any
Mr.
individual
President.
amendments?
Before we, yes, I move to close the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion's approved. Period of amendments closed.
Before I move to approve, Mr. President, I just wish to give my full support on this measure. I used to breed horses before I got into politics, Mr. President, in the early 90s, mid-90s. As a matter of fact, for the record, one of the horses I bred was one of the winningest horse in Philippine history. His name was Real Top, and I had received the Philracom Breeder of the Year award for that. Proud moment for me, Mr. President. Although I don't participate in the racing, I just do the breeding program, Mr. President. So I'm very happy that with the entrance of this new racetrack, we can again promote the breeding of these beautiful, wonderful creatures for these racetracks, Mr. President. I move to approve on second readings House Bill number 6835, Mr. President.
Before that, this representation wishes to be made a co-sponsor, if Senator
Yes.
Poe will allow, because his father was the one who taught me how to bet on the horses.
Yes, she's in agreement, Mr. President. And if I
Yes.
can be made also a co-sponsor, Senator Gordon also would like to be made a co-sponsor, as well as all the members that are present, Mr. President, like to be made
In
co-sponsor.
fact, we
Except
were
for
the
Senator
ones who-
Joel, Mr. President. I
Yes,
know Senator Joel is not into gambling, so.
All right. We named one of the horses of Ambassador Dante Guaco after HS Jack's action. What did you call that? Chugswang. All right. What is the motion now?
For second reading, Mr. President, approval on second
Any
reading.
objection? Hearing none. House Bill 6835 is approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6919 under Committee Report number 125.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, I move to recognize the sponsor, and for the record, no member wishes to interpolate the measure. So if it's a permission of the body, we move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of deliberation is closed.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments and ask the sponsor if there are any amendments. Mr. President.
Mr.
Senator Poe is
President,
recognized.
Mr. President, I have two amendments. I think Senator Gordon has his hand raised.
What are we taking up? Is that a franchise for radio TV?
Yes, Mr. President. This is
Media.
the, my apologies to Senator Gordon. This is the collective media. This is the radio TV stations in Region 8,
Yes.
Eastern Visayas.
To co-sponsor that, Mr. President.
Yes. I believe the gentleman from Zambales also has a proposed amendment, as he mentioned to me earlier in a phone conversation for radio TV.
No, that's already okay. It's already
Okay. Sige
incorporated.
po.
All
Okay.
public services, including humanitarian organizations, shall be given 10 minutes for
Okay.
presentation. It's already incorporated.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that. So
Thank you.
we'd like to recognize Senator Poe, Mr. President, for their committee amendment.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
Mr. President, just two amendments. The first is, hold on, just. Okay. On page 2, line 42, a new section is hereby inserted to read as follows. Section 4, Section 11 of RA 9773 is hereby amended as follows. Section 11, non-transferability of franchise. The grantee shall not lease, transfer, grant, the usufruct of, sell, nor assign this franchise or the rights and privileges acquired thereunder to any person, firm, company, corporation, or other commercial or legal entity, nor merge with any other corporation or entity, nor shall the controlling interests of the grantee be transferred, whether as a whole or in parts, whether simultaneously or contemporaneously, to any such person, firm, company, corporation, or entity without the prior approval of the Congress of the Philippines. Congress shall be informed of any sale, lease, transfer, grant of usufruct, or assignment of franchise, or the rights and privileges acquired thereunder, or the merger or transfer of the controlling interest of the grantee within 60 days after the completion of the said transaction. Failure to report to Congress such change of ownership shall render the franchise ipso facto revoked. Any person or entity to which this franchise is sold, transferred, or assigned shall be subject to the same conditions, terms, restrictions, and limitations of this Act. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
And then the second and last one is on page 2, line 43. A new section is hereby inserted to read as follows. Section 5, Section 12 of RA 9773 is hereby amended as follows. Section 12, dispersal of ownership. In accordance with the constitutional provision to encourage public participation in public utilities, the grantee shall offer at least 30% of its outstanding capital stock or a higher percentage that may hereafter be provided by law in any securities exchanged in the Philippines within 5 years from the time it has achieved the status of a national broadcasting network. A national broadcasting network is hereby defined as one that operates 3 or more and/or television stations. Renewal of its franchise provided that in cases where public offer or shares is not applicable, the grantee shall apply other methods of encouraging public participation by citizens and corporations operating public utilities as allowed by law. Non-compliance therewith shall render the franchise ipso facto revoked. I so move, Mr. President.
Any? May I call your attention on the committee report that you just read? It is bracketed,
The one that's bracketed. Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. President. You're right.
but you read it into the record. So just to clarify, no? Just to clarify, in what you read,
To remove the part that says
time it
bracket.
has achieved the status of a national broadcasting network, a national broadcast network is hereby defined as one that operates 3 or more radio and/or television stations. That is deleted.
Yes,
We are
yes, sir.
removing
From
that from
time
what you.
until stations.
Yes, we are removing that from what you read earlier, right?
I
All
thank
right.
you for the
Any
correction, Mr.
objection?
President.
Hearing none, adopted.
And renumber the sections accordingly, Mr. President.
Okay, so renumbered. Majority Leader,
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to close the period of amendments.
any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments closed.
President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6919. Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill 6919 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration is suspended.
Mr. President, I move to consider, resume consideration House Bill number 5491.
Any objection?
Yes.
Hearing none, consideration of 5491 is in order.
Mr. President, this is a act for a franchise for Cruise Telephone Company. I move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace Poe. Mr. President, for the record, there are no member who wishes to interpolate the measure. I move that we close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period of amendments and recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace Poe.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized for the period of amendments. No committee amendments.
No committee amendments, Mr. President.
How about individual amendments?
None.
Mr. President, I move to close the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments closed.
Move to approve on second reading House Bill number 5491. I so move, Mr.
Any
President.
objection? Hearing none, House Bill 5491 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the motion of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6373. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate the said measure. I move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the sponsor for any committee or individual amendments, Mr. President.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
Mr. President, I'm glad to report there are no individual or committee amendments.
Mr. President, with that, I move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments closed.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6373 under Committee Report number 120.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill 6373 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration or suspend consideration of the same.
Suspended, the consideration is suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 6254 under Committee Report number 121.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate on the said measure. I move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendment and recognize the sponsor for any amendments, Mr. President.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized for the period of amendments.
Again, Mr. President, it is my joy to say that there are no personal or committee amendments.
President, with that, I move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments closed.
I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6254 under Committee Report number 121.
Any objection? Hearing none. House Bill 6254 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6256.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
This is under Committee Report number 122. Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate the measure. I move that we close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor? If there are any committee amendments, we move to open the period of amendments.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized for the period of amendments.
There are no individual or committee amendments, Mr. President.
Mr. President, with that, I move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments closed.
Mr. President, move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6256 under Committee Report number 122.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill 6256 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration House Bill number 6374 under Committee Report number 123.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, no member wishes to sponsor to interpolate the measure. Move to close the period of interpolation.
Period of interpolation is closed.
Once again, we will move to open the period of amendment and recognize the sponsor for any amendments.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized. Period of amendments.
There are no committee or individual amendments, Mr. President.
Therefore, Mr. President, I move to close the period of amendments.
Hearing no objection, period of amendments closed.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6374 under Committee Report number 123.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill 6374 is approved on second reading.
I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
And finally, Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 7264 under Committee Report number 124.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, there being no member who wishes to interpolate the measure, I move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments and recognize the sponsor for any committee or individual amendments.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized for the period of amendments.
There are no committee or individual amendments, Mr. President.
With that, Mr. President, I move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments closed.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 7264 under Committee Report number 124.
Any objection? Here's none. House Bill 7264 is approved on second reading.
President,
Senator Richard Gordon is
I
recognized.
was just going to ask if it's not too late to be co-sponsor of this measure in Negros, Dumaguete, Mr. President.
Yes.
It's so recorded, the co-sponsor.
Yes, Mr. President. Before I suspend consideration of the same, I move with the permission of the body and the permission of the sponsor, if I can be made co-sponsor of all the franchise measures that were taken up tonight, Mr. President.
Me too.
Senator Gordon as well.
Shabiri Gordon.
Thank you, Mr.
So
President.
recorded.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of House Bill number 7264.
Any objection? Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Finally, Mr. President, if you are still up to it, are you all right to do the reference of business, Mr. President?
Yes, we have.
Yes, Mr. President, with that, I move to proceed with the reference of business, Mr. President.
Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Reference of business, message from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 28 September 2020, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 7669, an act officially naming the Mandaue Causeway located in the city of Mandaue, province of Cebu, stretching from the corner of S.B. Cabahog Street, traversing Tipolo Creek in Barangay Centro and Mandaue Reclamation Area, up to the bridge over the Mahiga Creek and at the Cebu International Port as Juano Avenue.
Referred to the Committee on Public Works.
House number 7685, an act establishing a technical education skills development tester training and assessment center in the municipality of Paniki, province of Tarlac, to be known as the Paniki Tarlac Tester Training and Assessment Center, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
House Number 7686, an act establishing Technical Education Skills Development Authority TESDA training and assessment centers in the municipalities Bayog and Quipos in the province of Zamboanga del Sur to be known as the Bayog Zamboanga del Sur TESDA Training and Assessment Center and the Quipos Zamboanga del Sur TESDA Training and Assessment Center and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
House Number 7687, an act converting the extension campuses of the Don Honorio Ventura State University, DHVSU, located in the municipality of Santo Tomas, Porac, Lubao, Candaba, Apalit, Mexico, Santa Rita, Florida Blanca, Guagua, and Sasmuan, all in the province of Pampanga, into regular campuses of the DHVSU and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
House Number 7692, an act establishing a regular campus in the Nueva Ecija University of Science and Technology, NEUST, in the municipality of Nampicuan, province of Nueva Ecija, to be known as the NEUST Nampicuan campus and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committee on Higher Education and Finance.
House Number 7693, an act establishing a campus of the Philippine Merchant Marine Academy, MMA, in Cagayan de Oro City, province of Misamis Oriental, to be known as the PMMA Cagayan de Oro City campus and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committee on Higher Education and Finance.
And House Number 7697, an act converting the Basilan State College, BASSC, in the city of Isabela, province of Basilan, into a state university to be known as the Basilan State University, BASSU, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committee on Higher Education, Ways and Means, and Finance.
Bills on first reading. Senate Number 1856, an act mandating the construction of a coastal road connecting the Caloocan, Malabon, Nabotas, and Valenzuela area, Camanaba, to the provinces of Bulacan, Pampanga, and Bataan, and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Lapid.
To the Committee on Rules.
Senate Number 1857, an act converting the Mamalacat Extension Office of the Land Transportation Office LTO located in Mabalacat City, Pampanga into a regular LTO district office and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Lapid.
To the Committee on Public Services and Finance.
Senate Number 1858, an act establishing a service road linking the eastern and western sides of the North Luzon Expressway NLEX in the province of Pampanga, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Lapid.
To the Committee on Rules.
Senate Number 1859, an act converting the Santo Tomas Infirmary Hospital in the municipality of Santo Tomas, province of Pampanga, into an annex of the Jose B. Lingad Memorial General Hospital in San Fernando, Pampanga, to be known as the Jose B. Lingad Memorial General Hospital, Santo Tomas Annex, and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Lapid.
To the Committee on Rules.
Senate Number 1860, an act converting the Sindalan Anao Provincial Road connecting the town of Mexico to the city of San Fernando in the province of Pampanga into a national road and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Lapid.
To the Committee on Rules.
Senate Number 1861, an act renaming the Clark International Airport located in Angeles City, Pampanga as Diosdado Macapagal International Airport, introduced by Senator Lapid.
To the Committee on Rules. We have additional reference of business.
Additional reference of business. Bills on first reading. Senate Number 1862, an act converting the extension campuses of the Don Honorio Ventura State University, DHVSU, located in the municipality of Santo Tomas, Porac, Lubao, Candaba, Apalit, Mexico, Santa Rita, Florida Blanca, Guagua, and Sasmuan, all in the province of Pampanga, into regular campuses of the DHVSU and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Lapid.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
Senate Number 1863, an act strengthening the Games and Amusements Board and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Lapid.
To the Committees on Games and Finance.
Resolution, PS Resolution Number 531, resolution directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the censorship action taken by Facebook with the end in view of ensuring the protection and non-curtailment of the constitutional guaranteed right of freedom of speech and of expression, introduced by Senator De La Rosa.
To the Committees on Justice and Public Information. There is second additional reference.
Bill on first reading, Senate Number 1864, entitled An Act Providing for a Unified System for Separation, Retirement, and Pension of the Military and Uniformed Personnel MUP Services of the Republic of the Philippines, creating the Military and Uniformed Personnel Retirement Fund and providing funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator De La Rosa.
To the Committees on National Defense, Ways and Means, Government Corporations, Finance and Ways and Means. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, after a very fruitful day, I move that we adjourn session, Mr. President, until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, October 5. Happy weekend, everyone.
Any objection? There being none, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, October 5, 2020.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.